Part of me hates to admit this, but there is an element of me whenever we have guests in the 7 a.m. hour, it's a little bit of a stereotype by me. And I'm like, if you're willing to get up and come onto our lowly-ass show in the 7 a.m. hour, you must be crazy smart and like the superest nice person in the world.
Yeah, well, I know we at least I know our guest at 7:35 is smart.
Never
I know that much.
Our guest read his work yesterday and thought it was easily the most enlightening Caitlin Clark piece out there. Athlete Time Person of the Year. That was Caitlin Clark that announced me yesterday. Sean Gregory, who wrote the piece on her, spent a week in Plainfield, Indiana to do the piece. He will join us coming up here at 7:35 on this very nice Wednesday morning. No fog on my commute in today.
Yeah, but isn't it supposed to snow tonight?
I believe it is. Kind of right around rush hour, right?
Oh, that's great. Didn't it do that a couple weeks ago as well? Everyone was wrecking and crashing into each other.
Yeah.
JMV could have stayed on the air to 8 o'clock. Corbin is in again. He's shaking his head like he got caught up in it at some. The worst so far, me living here, and I've been caught in Indy traffic other times, but the worst where you wanted to punch your steering wheel was the Friday of All-Star Weekend. I decided,
that was ugly.
There was a party down here, so I decided to leave, and it took me from Irvington to downtown. Took about 95 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. I felt claustrophobic trying to drive down into downtown that day.
A good Wednesday morning, everybody out there. That is the voice of Andy Sweeney. I'm Kevin Bowen. Corbin Lingenfelter again in for Mark Dykton the rest of this week. I thought Wright Thompson back maybe a year or two ago wrote a tremendous background on Caitlin Clark. I don't think you will find a Clark piece that has as many candid comments, frankly, from her on a variety of topics like that timepiece did. So again, Sean Gregory, who wrote that, going to join us coming up here at 7:35. Stephen Holder, as we get back to Colts Wednesdays. They are on the practice field later today. I would assume they are outdoors for that practice, although the weather doesn't look too bad. And Denver coming up on Sunday, north of 50 degrees there. And what center move will the Pacers make here? Tony East going to join us coming up at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, if you didn't read the Caitlin Clark article, still listen to the interview at 7:35, but, it's a long article, but I think it's an enlightening piece, and I think, you mentioned it talking with Sean coming up at 7:35. She says a couple things and opens up at least a little bit about, some of the racial issues and some of the things that followed her, obviously, around this past season, social issues. And so I found that, to be honest, she's been, we interviewed her for 7 or 8 minutes. She will do interviews, but she is very guarded. There's no doubt about that. So interesting to talk with Sean if he thought he kind of got in there and was able to get some truth serum from her on that. A thought as Barry Odom yesterday, we didn't hear. We'll hear more of the sound as we go today. A couple different things on the Purdue search. Butler last night. KB Butler, this might be another quad 3, quad 4 loss. Right now, we wake up this morning, Butler is far away from the NCAA tournament. It gets no easier this weekend, of course, with the Indy Classic. And like you mentioned, we've had a week off, and then the last couple days have been so busy. Like, it's go time. Like, I feel like I'm ready to go. I'm ready to talk Colts. If you're a Colts fan, you got a nice little break there, but it's go time. This is the game. You had the failings last year. This is where you learn from those failings, and you go win a big football game, and you put yourself in contention to make the playoffs.
A few weeks ago, a snotty Max Bowen all of a sudden put some sort of mucusy substance onto my left knee on pants that I got for my birthday from Maddie.
Oh, no.
And, kind of panic mode, and here I am. I just grabbed like a wipe, and I wipe what I think, is this mucusy substance, and all of a sudden it has left a stain on my pants that I'm like, man, I don't know if that's going to come out.
Oh, no.
That's how I look at the loss Butler just suffered last night, because now there's two of those.
And they have two of them
on their pants. I said it yesterday on a couple occasions. I'm like, North Dakota State shoots a ton of threes, and those teams, I think, on a mid-major basis, always kind of scare you of like, what happens when they all go in one of those nights? Last night, they all went in the first half. It was quite the spirited comeback. They actually led by 5.
I thought it was over. I thought it was
done.
With
like 2 minutes to go.
It's over.
And yet, Jackson Money, if I'm saying that correct, hit shot after shot in the final 90 seconds, 2 minutes there. So as you said, if you want to look into a resume, they already have the quad. They have one of the wilder resumes here a month and a half into the season. They have 3 quad 1 or quad 2 wins. you don't find many teams hovering around the bubble right now with that. Like Indiana's got one. Arkansas got their first one last night with Cal. Texas only has one of these. So Butler's got like some nice wins, but then they have just the ugly quad 4 to Austin Peay. Technically, last night was a quad 3. I think
it was.
North Dakota State at least is a decent mid-major team, but I get the Big East will offer you a whole lot of opportunity, but that's going to be an ugly back end of the resume, and that is going to be something that will be nitpicked heavily. They fell from, I think, 13 spots in the net last night. They were right there as a bubble team going into last night.
Per the net, they were actually an NCAA team going into the game last night. They fell from 58 to 71.
I found
in the net
it
rankings.
Interesting. Thad Matta, Jakari White was the North Dakota State guy who just gunned 3 after 3 inside of Hinkle Fieldhouse in the first half last night. He compared it to a Brandon Paul. Dude, you remember Brandon Paul at Illinois?
I do, but that's also a very random reference.
Brandon Paul had 43 against Matta and the Buckeyes.
Boy, that's a pull.
Over a decade ago. So that was certainly a disappointing loss for Butler. Again, it's year 3. I think when you bring back your 2 leading scorers and you bring in a 6-year guy like Patrick McCaffrey, expectations are to make the tournament. And they'll have an opportunity again on Saturday against Wisconsin, who also lost last night.
Yeah, they did to Illinois.
Somehow Butler wins that game. Again, they're going to have one of the wilder-looking non-conference resumes of 4 quad 1 or quad 2 wins, what people dream of in the non-conference. 3 of those would be away from home?
Oh, yeah.
And yet they will have these 2 losses. So in a quiet week of sports here locally, Butler kind of got center stage last night and did not handle that well at all.
Well, I think people want to know, did you ever get the mucus off the pants? I mean, so what's happening? What's the future of the pants?
I'm going to go with one more spray and wash and see what happens.
Yeah, see, I am a...
Do you have any advice?
No. In fact, this is
listeners?
Yeah, Corbin. He's got a lot of advice, I'm sure, in this. Stain advice. Go ahead.
Club soda.
Really?
Club soda, mix a little baking powder, takes it right out.
Look at that!
So I'll text my wife.
Andy Sweeney doubted Corbin.
See, here's the problem. This is a big battle at the Sweeney household, okay? I get all the stuff that's got all the chemicals in it. You know, you watch TV or look at Amazon. This will take out any stain. And then you buy it, and it's not cheap. You buy it. It takes 3 to 5 business days to arrive, and then it doesn't work, okay? And the stain or whatever is still there. It doesn't work. And then my wife, she has all these different, mixed baking soda and vinegar and this and that. And sometimes they work, and most of the time they don't. So I believe, not to use this moniker, I believe all the stain removal stuff is mostly fake news. If I get a stain on a sweatshirt or a pair of pants, I just burn the pants. I just throw them away, just go buy another pair. It's over. Wear them around the house. You're never going to be able to wear these out in public.
Sean goes Dawn dish soap. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That Dawn dish soap is not bad.
Okay, I'm jotting all these down.
This
would be great because right now Maddie is not happy.
Well,
with me.
I can tell you, at our last house, we had, it was older, but we had spent good money on a washer and dryer, and I was getting they look like oil stains on a lot of my clothes. And so you have a $30, $40, $50 hoodie. You have nice pants you put in the washer. They come out with some oil stain, and they're ruined.
Well, nowadays, aren't the kids wearing different stains in their clothes? So can't I just say that?
Yeah, you're too old for that now.
I'm Gen Z in it.
Yeah, you're too old for that. Where are you with the Colts on this Wednesday? How do you feel as we sit here on a Wednesday with essentially a week and a half to just kind of sit on this game and think about it?
Yeah, I think it's the ultimate coin flipper. I think the Vegas line should be a little closer to a pick 'em. There is a kind of a wild Denver statistic to me that explains, I think, why they're 8-5. Again, Andy, 7 of their 8 wins are by 2 scores.
Oh, yeah.
And yet, when you look at their personnel and even some of their stats, you're like, wait, how are they winning these games by 2 scores? The Colts don't have a win this year by 2 scores. I mean, it's just kind of crazy when you look at it. So I'll try to explain that. I thought Jim Bob Cooter had an interesting comment in relation to Anthony Richardson yesterday that, is really I think it's an intangible that's hard to teach. And I don't think Richardson was exposed to much of it at all in college. And the fact that he has shown a little bit of an ability to do that in the NFL is a big, big quarterback check mark. Now, again, situations and environments and atmospheres, and, I said yesterday it's the most at-stake game of Richardson's career. Those will continue to rise, but that, I think, is an important thing. So just really can't wait. 425 is going to be a long wait on Sunday.
And you're right. Dude, it's really nice weather on Sunday. It's going to be nicer in
52,
Denver
right?
it's going to be nicer in Denver than it's going to be here. It's going to be sunny, and it's going to be sunny up in the 50s.
Yeah. It looks very, very
in
good
Denver.
on that end.
What's it going to be here? Sunday is going to be 80% of rain, 80% chance of rain in the 40s. How's Denver having better weather than us in mid to late December? How does that happen?
Well, I don't know. I feel like Denver is sneaky decent weather.
But when it's bad, it dumps snow.
Yeah, but
we're
like,
not going to get that, but
I
they'll
think they get
that.
the knock of like it snows from whatever,
Right.
Thanksgiving to St. Patrick's Day. And it's like, no,
I guess you're right.
not really. Pacers talk, Tony East coming up at 9. They have the 76ers on Friday. I'm thinking to myself, boy, they waived Moses Brown earlier this week. Does Miles Turner get 12 fouls to face Joel Embiid on Friday?
It's a great question. When does he foul out? Who else?
Gosh.
Do they throw Enrique Freeman at Joel Embiid coming up this weekend?
I stopped by Pacers practice yesterday, and as I sat there and kind of watched things operate, by the way, Aaron Nesmith, you might see some video of him doing, I would say, rather intensive shooting drills. It doesn't sound like his return is happening, though, imminently at all. I don't know. I got the impression that this could last through the rest of the month of December. But I'm sitting there watching, and I'm like, there's Turner in a contract year. There's Benedict Mathurin as a former lottery pick. There's Jarris Walker as a former lottery pick. Andy, it's December 11th. If I said all three of those were on the Pacers on February 11th, would you take that, or would you take the other side?
Well, I think that's the question. Do we think they move somebody? I think they move somebody. Yeah.
And then it becomes who of the three?
Right. And who is most valuable? What do people think of Jarris Walker, even though he's shown very little, right, in his NBA career? I mean, he's shown a little bit. It's not like I'm not saying he's a bust, but he's not a rookie that has come in and averaged 18 points a game immediately. And there are a lot of those guys in the NBA that have.
That overall question for me is just one that I feel like is going to be a little bit more front burner for me here in the next few weeks, I guess couple of months until the NBA trade deadline, which is early February. And honestly, if you made me pick one of those three, is it the guy that I love the most?
Well, he's probably the most valuable.
Like, you don't
Is
have...
he not? Matherin's the most valuable.
And when you look at Turner, I mean, yes, he's in a contract year, but like, what's your answer behind him?
Right. Well, there is no answer behind him. No,
there isn't. Torn in Achilles.
No.
So I don't know. Right now at 10 and 15, you are trending in a direction where like the schedule. I mean, you've had the easiest schedule in the NBA so far. So if this continues, those questions become very real and hard to ignore. And I'll be very, very interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah, one thing I want to ask Tony East, and this is kind of something, it alludes to what you're talking about, and we even mentioned it yesterday. For me, KB, we felt like we knew the blueprint, did we not, of this team? The last year or so, we've kind of known how they want to play, the personnel. There hasn't been too much questioning. There has been more excitement around the personnel. And now I know they have injuries, but it's not all injuries. Now it kind of feels like we wanted to see a guy like Jarris Walker grow up, right? When you mention him, and then, the direction of the franchise, I think, is a little bit up in the air. It has to be. The blueprint that they put out there, are they second guessing that? Do they double down? Can they double down on the trade deadline, or do they move some of these pieces? Can you buy buyers and sellers and still get better? I think all these are valid questions. So, busy show today. Again, Sean Gregory going to join us at 7:35. Stephen Holder in the 8 o'clock hour as
I'm jotting all these down. Thank you to Kim in the YouTube chat.
What did Kim say?
Take an old toothbrush and tied it up.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's probably your best bet. If you made, and that's nothing against you, Corbin, because I believe I have used your concoction or something close to it at times before, but dial soap, rub it on there, get a toothbrush around the house. I got to watch out what I say and pray. And maybe don't wash it with a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, I did.
That might work as well.
I already watched it once, tried to be a hero, and I was just so stupid.
I know.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Jim.
Good job. Help us out on the YouTube. So there you go. Tony East going to join us coming up at 9 o'clock. On the other side, your morning check down. What attracted Barry Odom to Purdue, plus your news and scores from overnight. Appreciate you waking up with us. It's a Hump Day Wednesday right here, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
The man that wrote what I think is the most enlightening piece so far on Caitlin Clark, that would be her Time Athlete of the Year story from yesterday. Sean Gregory from Time Magazine going to join us here coming up in about 10, 15 minutes to talk more about that. Andy Sweeney, as you lead off a morning check down, I believe you're going to go to the new head football coach in West Lafayette.
Yeah, as we were finishing up yesterday on the air, Mike Babinski and others there in West Lafayette at Purdue introducing Barry Odom as the next head coach there for the Boilermakers. He was asked a litany of questions. We'll dive into who could follow him, the offense, and everything else as we go this morning. But what attracted Odom to want to take the job in West Lafayette?
Yeah, you look at the leadership in the AD's chair. You look at leadership on campus. That alignment adds up. Their vision of what they want the football program to be is exactly what I do. They want to compete and win championships, and then they're going to resource it the way to help us get that done. So that, number one, okay, the ability to play in the Big Ten Conference was very, very attractive to me. The geographic location in the Midwest is where I'm from and believe in, and think that we can turn this team into a winner really quickly.
Yeah, really quickly, that's interesting at the end because he said that a couple different times. He thinks they can win some football games and win some football games next season. If nothing else, Barry Odom was a very serious football coach yesterday. Very serious.
Just totally spaced and didn't put two and two together. He hired Ryan Walters at Missouri.
That's a good point. Yeah, I didn't think about that either.
I was like, wow, Ryan Walters was on his staff for several years at Missouri on that end. You don't typically necessarily see that. Yeah, two things kind of struck me from Odom yesterday. One, I mean, he mentioned fast track, and this is not a rebuild very often. I mean, he was adamant about that, and certainly it's a day and age you can do it. And then secondly, he talked about just how much he was struck by the Purdue fan base. And, I mean, I was stunned last season, week in and week out, how routinely those fans showed up. And so certainly that will be there. But a ton of work to get to for Barry Odom, and we hope to have the coach on here at some point here later this week. All right, it was an ugly one last night at Hinkle, in particular, ugly first half and an ugly final 90 seconds. That is a stain on the resume that's going to be hard to get out for Butler. They lose to North Dakota State 71-68. For those that missed the game, North Dakota State chucked up 1,000,000 threes in the first half and made nearly all million of them. Butler was down 23 at one point. They come roaring back. They take a 5-point lead with 2 minutes and change to go. I'm thinking
they'd outscored them by over 30 points in the second half.
Yeah,
on
they're
the comeback.
living at the foul line. Their big three all hit a three back to back, and Pierre Brooks and Jameel Telford and Patrick McCaffrey. And then North Dakota State made every play that was needed in the final 90 seconds. Butler tried to play bully ball, and it did not work. So now this resume has a quad 4 loss in Austin Peay, a quad 3 loss in North Dakota State. It's got some good wins, but oh boy, you're going to need a ton of good wins in the Big East to make up for that one. Again, they've got Wisconsin coming up in the Indy Classic over at Gainbridge Fieldhouse on Saturday.
Yeah, we'll get to other college basketball here in a second, but here's the problem, and it's happening again to the Big East, and Butler is a part of this. Right now, the average net ranking in the Big East is 73. Okay, so yes, there are wins to be had. There's no doubt there are quad 1 wins and quad 2 wins to be had, but not as much as in other conferences. Last year, the Big East, if you remember, had 3 teams that made the NCAA tournament. Right now, if the tournament were tomorrow, they project to have 3 teams that make the NCAA tournament. So you're right. There are games to be had that they can make up some of this, but Butler struggling kind of shows off that the Big East, again, is not going to get 7 or 8 or even 6 teams in the tournament. Just to give you a, for instance, or a comparison, the SEC, the best conference, I hate saying that, in the country, their average net is 32. Again, the Big East is 73. So not good last night from Butler. Other top 25 matchups in college basketball last night. You had Tennessee over Miami, Duke over Incarnate Word. You had John Calipari at Arkansas. They beat number 14 Michigan last night. Houston over Troy. And then another team coming in here to Indianapolis for the Indy Classic on Saturday, Wisconsin. They were losers last night, 86-80 to Illinois. How about that?
Just a reminder on that Indy Classic, it'll be noon, Butler and Wisconsin, and then Purdue and Texas A&M coming up at 2:30. Per usual, Matt Painter, outstanding with JMV yesterday. If you missed that That is up on the podcast. A look ahead to Week 15 in the NFL, Thursday Night Football. It is, I think, a good one. I know the 49ers are reeling, but again, somebody's got to win the NFC West. It's them and the Rams coming up Thursday night, and obviously we will look ahead a lot to the Colts and the Broncos here. Week 15, I thought 4:25 kickoff. Oh, they'll get a different CBS broadcast team than they typically have gotten.
Why would you think that,
I
Kevin
feel like
Bowen?
4:25 windows are different, are they not?
Well, yeah, usually, yeah.
Spiro Ditas and Adam Archuleta.
So they're doing the thing where they have 7 1 o'clock games, and then, 4 or 5 games are all at 4:25?
Yeah, and it's
so
a
there's no
great
4:05 game.
4:25 window, but yeah, we are yet to get to the Saturday games. Next week, we will start, again, you're going to have those 3 college football playoff games opposite some NFL games next Saturday. That's why Notre Dame and Indiana kind of that standalone on Friday night.
I'm not going to leave the house next Saturday.
Is going to draw
basically
a huge TV rating. So, again, Colts back to practice later today. We'll see about the availability of guys like Josh Downs. Does the Ryan Kelly 21-day practice window return start? Is Braden Smith back? Those are some of the things to note here as the Colts return from their bye.
I'm already starting to think about it. Next Saturday, my caloric intake from not moving from the couch all day watching these games.
Gonna put a hole in the couch.
It's not going to be good. Bucks over the Magic, Thunder over the Mavericks. NBA Cup quarterfinals last night. Let's take a break. Coming up on the other side, the man who followed Caitlin Clark around, Sean Gregory from Time. What did he learn? He joins us next here on The Fan on this Wednesday.
Coming up, plenty of Colts and Broncos talk. It is about as big of a game as you're going to find in Week 15. We'll do that here in a bit. Started off the show by saying to Andy Sweeney, anytime we have a guest willing to come on the show during the 7 a.m. hour, I guess apologetically stereotype them as super smart and hardworking.
Yeah, and they're up in the morning like us.
Right, but they're actually probably doing things that
They're probably doing other things, yeah.
matter than discussing what stains to get out of their pants. Let's head to the Payless Liquors hotline right now. I thought it was the most enlightening piece we have gotten on Caitlin Clark, Time Athlete of the Year, the man that penned it all together, and it was a terrific read. He is Sean Gregory of Time. Sean, good morning. Thank you for the time.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm glad you enjoyed the story.
Extremely well done. We want to, I think, get to a lot of it, but let me start here. Did I get wind that you spent a week in Plainfield, Indiana to get this story?
I did. So, the photo shoot was on October 30th, and my interview with Caitlin was on November 4th. So I was going to go back, and then just, was looking at the hotel prices on the Sunday night where I was going to come back, and it was downtown Indianapolis, so it was $830 and $1,000. So I looked I'm like, the Colts, I didn't know the Colts were that popular, and the Colts were on the road. And then I realized that Taylor Swift was in town, so it was just more efficient to stay out in Plainfield. They jacked the prices up in the Hampton Inn in Plainfield for the weekend too, but if you stay there for a week, it kind of smoothed out a little bit. So and it was Plainfield is there was a Steak and Shake right down the street, some nice downtown restaurants. So shout out to Plainfield. I enjoyed my time there.
Steak and Shake in Plainfield, baby.
The Hampton Inn and a little bit of Steak and Shake for
What more
Sean
do you
Gregory.
need, honestly?
I mean, come on, who's got it better than him? Let me ask you this, in great piece, and thank you for joining us. We interviewed her once, and she does some of these interviews, but she's a tough one to crack. She's very safe. She's guarded. She has a good team around her. She knows what to jump into that will, she obviously has a brand that she is trying to protect. Did you find her open and honest? Did you feel like you got some openness and some honesty from Caitlin Clark?
For sure. I think, I think during the season and in press conferences and stuff, things are moving so fast that, she's just sticking to basketball. She's trying to stick to basketball. She got questioned about some of the more quote unquote controversial stuff. And, she did address it, but I think this was her chance. She knew going in, listen, I'm going to do one of these big interviews, one of these big end-of-year interviews to kind of like look back, reflect on the year and everything that happened. So, if you read reading the story, it kind of goes through a lot of the flashpoints of the year, mostly in her WNBA season. And so I think she knew like this was a chance to kind of set the record straight, say what she wanted to say. And, now if she's asked about stuff, she can kind of look, she can point back at this and say, I covered this, in the Time interview. So I think for her, it was a strategy of like, I'm going to answer this stuff, take it on. And, she might continue to speak out on stuff. Who knows? But I think she just wanted to kind of set the record straight in one sitting. And this kind of accomplished that for her.
Again, he is Sean Gregory, outstanding piece for Time on Caitlin Clark, Athlete of the Year. Sean, what was the one question that you wanted to get a candid answer on?
Oh, man, that's a great question. I think on how she felt about being controversial, and I thought there was a candid answer. She's not controversial. Like all the controversies that were around her, the Kennedy Carter foul, the Greg Doyle stuff, the some of the Olympic snub, they were all, she didn't perpetrate the controversies, right? Like she was a party to controversy. So I was interested in how she felt about that. And she said, yeah, I feel like the most controversial person in America. I tell my friends that, but I'm not. It's confusing. And I thought that was really interesting because that's how, from the outside, I thought it would feel. And then once she kind of was like, I agree with that. And I agree. I am controversial, but I'm really not. And I don't know why. And it's about the stuff that happens around me. It gave me a little permission to go and ask about each of these controversies, quote unquote, and be like, all right, what's your take? Everybody was talking about the Kennedy Carter foul. Like, let's, and she was asked about it like after games and stuff. All right, we're here having breakfast. Looking back on it 3 months later, or however many times, how do you really feel? And she kind of said, I wish it didn't happen, but emotions get the best of you, and this stuff happened. She wasn't as upset about some of this stuff as other people, which I think was important for her to get across.
If we put maybe some of those quotes to the side, I think maybe what fans will come across in the story that might be a hair pinch me would be this. One, Taylor Swift has alerted her that Trav and I, if I have that quote direct, Trav and I are excited to come to a Fever game up in 2025. So that is something to look forward to. And then also, you rebounded for Caitlin Clark. If you don't mind, could you share with our audience how that came about, and maybe just in general, where your conversations were with Caitlin Clark? Andy and I interviewed her in a, in a little, what do you call it, a restaurant area?
It's like a cafeteria.
Inside a Cambridge Fieldhouse, and it sounded like you had, kind of a variety of experiences in chatting with her.
For sure. The day was kind of laid out, with breakfast. You could talk to her there. She's going to go work out. And then we were supposed to go play golf, but it was raining. And then Stephanie White, it was the day that Stephanie White had a press conference, so about just going to lunch. But anyway, when I saw she was going to work out, I played basketball in high school and college. I'm like, and I play now in old man leagues. I'm like, why don't I be useful? And it wasn't a gimmick. It was more, listen, instead of just watching her shoot, I brought my shorts and a T-shirt and told the assistant coach, listen, like, I can rebound.
Let's go.
I like that.
Honestly, the Pacers might need you. Rebounding's an issue right now, Sean, for the Pacers.
Sean, how tall are you? Can you play center in the NBA? What do you think? Can you back up Miles Turner?
I don't know about that. I'm 6'3". I don't know if I can. I can block shots like Miles Turner, but yeah. So and the experience was literally. I write about it in the story. I felt like, I'd have to move. And the coach said, like, you won't have to do much. Laughing. But in this drill is 6 minutes, all a really hard drill. 6 minutes running all over the place, banging threes, and she hits 14 in a row, 12 in a row, 12 in a row. And so there were times where I was just standing still. I felt like my feet were kind of nailed to the ground. So it was a really neat experience. And then it is getting the story, but I kind of screwed up at the end. She was trying to hit a certain amount in a certain amount of time, and I was passing to the assistant coach, and he would pass to Caitlin. And as it was getting close, I overthrew the assistant coach.
Oh, boy.
And I was like, oh, my God. But she missed that shot. I felt so guilty. But my bad pass didn't actually cost her. And I asked her afterwards, listen, did you miss that shot because you were pissed that I screwed up the last pass? And she said, no, I knew you screwed up, but it went in and out. It's my fault. So that was foolish.
But she was nice to you, so that's good. Nice. Sean Gregory with us from Time. He wrote the piece, obviously. If you haven't read it, you need to, on Caitlin Clark. It's a fantastic read. Going back to the racial issues, the social issues that she was really thrown into here over the last year or so, do you think that continues to follow her? Is that something do you think we'll talk about next NBA season, Sean?
It might tamp down a bit. I think what precipitated a lot of it was there were other WNBA players who spoke about it going into the season. Particularly Asia Wilson had some, kind of candid comments of how she felt about how, Caitlin Clark's race helped her in the marketing sense. Not that Caitlin Clark hasn't earned everything on the court and off the court too, but was a sense that she was getting more attention perhaps from, this is on Asia Wilson's perspective, because she was white. And so, I think that kind of going into the season was a storyline. Yeah, I mean, some of the reactions to the story, some people are upset that she said that she has privilege, right? And so that's upsetting some people right now. So she might always be a lightning rod, but I think next year, listen, this was a very heated political year, and there's just so much going on that I would hope and guess that maybe perhaps next year it might tamp down a bit. But as you know, in this, America today, there's always going to be kind of culture wars, unfortunately.
All the boxes were checked. Sean Gregory wrote the piece with Caitlin Clark, again, Time Athlete of the Year. That was Leo Messi the year before, Aaron Judge, Simone Biles, LeBron James, the U.S. women's soccer team, if you want to look at some recent winners of that. When I say all the boxes were checked, whether you want some candor on not making the Olympic team, thoughts on Angel Reese, Christy Sides, I thought entered a little bit of a candid comment there. Where Caitlin Clark wants to improve going into year two, all of that. I guess I asked you early on, the one question you wanted answer. What was the one question you wanted answered? Kind of flipping that, what was the one answer that maybe really surprised you the most?
Oh, wow. Maybe the Olympic one in the sense that she kind of nailed it in the sense, not that it was surprising, but it was just maybe how spot on it was and how she took it on. Like, no, I thought I deserved to be on the team. I was good enough to be on the team, but I don't want to be there just to grow the popularity of the sport. And that was a big, when she didn't make the team, there were a lot of media members or few media members and some commentators and social media folks and stuff who were just, screaming about how they blew it. This is unfair. But she had a great point. Like, what about fairness, right? Like, I wasn't playing great at the time. I don't want to be there just because people come cheer for me on the bench, right? And she was also pretty adamant that, like, a month later, I would have been on the team. 3 weeks later, I would have been in the team. It was just about the timing of selection. And she was great about how that snub motivated her. It probably helped her because she got a break. And we're talking here perhaps because of that snub, because she played kind of great. Not to say she would not have played great, but it definitely there was something motivating her there, and the rest there really helped her.
Andy, I think I speak for you and I. My favorite quote was from the one, the only Lynn Dunn, saying she would have done a back handspring if she wasn't 77 years old. There's no one better than Lynn Dunn. Sean, you
she's
interviewed
the best.
Probably 37 people for that story. Lynn Dunn is the greatest.
No, I'm glad when she said that. I almost did a back handspring. I was so happy she said that. So great.
Yeah, Sean, we had her on weekly, and we would talk basketball, but she also was big into romance novels. Mm-hmm. So kind of an odd spot to go with a woman in her 70s. But that's
romance and murder.
Yeah, romance and murder, Sean. That's where we went every Wednesday.
Oh, that's great. I wish she sounds like a fun lady to hang out and have a beer at the place I stayed. There's a bar near my Plainfield Hotel.
The hotel bar at the Hampton and Plainfield. Sean Gregory and Lynn Dunn throwing one back. Sean, great work, man. I mean, outstanding. I read a lot on Caitlin Clark. I think Wright Thompson's feature, a couple years ago was tremendous on the background, but you obviously did a wonderful job in being able to connect with her and provide a ton for, maybe some readers that haven't followed her every step. So congrats on that work, and thanks for making time with us here so early on this Wednesday morning.
Thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate that.
Sean Gregory, Payless Liquors Hotline. That is Time Magazine. Andy, a couple things we didn't get with Sean right there, but okay. I want to make sure we throw in there. Basketball-wise, for Caitlin Clark, she mentioned she wants to improve her upper body strength in the mid-range game coming into year 2. That was a big reason why she decided to say no to the 3-on-3 Unrivaled League. And then I thought the Christy Sides comment, I'm paraphrasing a bit, so let me start there. But I felt like there were times where she referenced Stephanie White and the Connecticut Sun matchup. And remember, Connecticut really had Caitlin Clark's number.
They did. Yeah, they did.
This year, individually, that is. She said that she was blown away by the game plans that Connecticut had for her, whereas she felt like at times the Fever's thought was, hey, there's the pick and roll. Go ahead and attack it.
Yeah, I found that to be interesting and maybe telling, not maybe, very telling. And then on top of it, when she was in these interviews watching the start of the women's basketball season, a month and a half ago, whatever it was, and she's like, the pro game is so different and so much better in the WNBA. I feel like I could go back to college now and score 50 points. I found that to be interesting. The other two things, and Sean mentioned it, I asked him about it. What I find to be, I'm trying to think of the exact verbiage, but interesting is, Caitlin's walking the line of she has been thrust into social and racial issues, and in those issues, whatever she says, she's going to be the bad guy in a lot of ways. So her navigating that the last year or two, does she have to continue? I mean, that's going to be a tired story. Continue to navigate this year. How she's been able to do that, I find interesting. And then on top of it, it
sounds exhausting.
It is exhausting. I mean, it is very exhausting. So will that continue? That is something besides basketball that I'll be watching. And then the other thing, and you mentioned it there, all the Taylor Swift stuff. Will she go to a Chiefs game and sit in the suite? And then, calling Trav. Trav. You ever been called Kev? Let me call you Kev
Yeah,
on the air.
My mom
Kev.
and my wife call me Kev, but yeah,
I figured that was the case.
please don't on that end. The Taylor Swift again. Welcome Caitlin Clark to the Eras Tour. I think 4 bags of merchandise, if I'm remembering the details correctly.
What's that? $2,000 worth of
Sean's
merchandise?
piece, certainly, yes. And said Trav and I are excited to come to a Fever game. I found it. You want to talk about exhausting? Did you see the tidbit in the story about how Caitlin's security team gave her a 30-page PDF on how to navigate Lucas Oil Stadium for the concert?
A 30-page.
When's the last time you've read 30 pages on anything?
Oh, goodness. Well, I do read books, I'm not, I'm not the true sports radio guy. I'll read a book here or there. Come on.
Gosh, you're a loser.
What about Belichick giving the 400-page manifesto? I want to get to that later, to North Carolina. 30 pages to Lucas Oil. That's nothing for Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
He gave a 400-page Bible to North Carolina and said, figure it out.
Belichick's got 30 pages on the coffin corner punt.
He does.
If you'd like to read that, North Carolina Chancellor on that end. Stephen Holder in 10 to talk some Colts. Again, a wild Denver statistic. Andy, let me share this with you.
All right, let's go.
Why is Denver 8-5? I think they're one of the surprises, really, of the entire NFL season, certainly in the AFC. And, they have had some promising individuals. I think Bo Nix has had a better than most rookie season. Individually, Patrick Surtain is one of the best defensive players in the league at corner. But again, it's kind of a hodgepodge skill group. It's a front seven defensively that won't blow you away, I think, with individual names. But this stat really stood out to me. They have, if you look back in the past 15 years in the NFL, they have the 3rd highest sack differential of any team in the league over the last 15 years. Okay, so what is sack differential? How many sacks you have.
Right.
And how many sacks you have given up.
Right. This year they have 47 sacks.
They lead the NFL with 47 sacks. They've given up 19, which is the 3rd fewest. So when you look at that, the plus 28 sack differential at this point in the season, it's the 3rd best any NFL team has had in the last 15 years. So, again, it's kind of a weird statistic, but it explains a little bit more of why Denver's 8-5, why 7 of their 8 wins are by 2 scores. Because when you look at just kind of their raw numbers, yards per game and, whatever, defensive, rushing yards allowed, there are some nice defensive numbers, but certainly offensively, they don't blow you away in a lot of these areas. But that right there, what they're able to do, and think about that. 3rd fewest sacks with a rookie quarterback. That's not something you typically see. And Bo Nix can escape, but still, their protection's been very good. And again, they have a very nondescript front seven. So when I look at the Colts, there is part of me that thinks on paper they should be built to counter both of those areas. Anthony Richardson, when's the last time he's taken a sack?
I know. And if you get there, he'll carry you until he throws the ball out of bounds. So, I know.
And then, defensively, you do have all of these names in the front seven, all this money and all these draft picks invested. So that angle to the game is probably one that I'll focus on here a lot over the next couple of days. But again, why is Denver at this point of the season? Well, that sack differential number, 3rd best in the NFL over the last 15 years.
Yeah, the last 3 games they've allowed 2 sacks. And part of that is Bo
Denver.
Nix. Yeah,
yes.
That's Denver. Bo Nix is 3rd, I believe, on their team in rushing. I'm just interested. Patrick Surtain is so good. What about the other corner? Can you attack the other corner? The
Riley
other
Moss
corners.
is banged up.
Yeah,
and that is a big angle to this game. Josh Downs probably the big injury to watch here in Indy. Riley Moss out in Denver.
And then I think. And we'll obviously have today, tomorrow, and Friday on a Football Friday to talk about it. But, for the Colts, KB, they've been able to, even if it's been an ugly game, they have been able to stay in games. And the last couple weeks, that has been what's been so good for them is they've been able to stay in games, and then when you get that one chance down the stretch, Anthony Richardson and the offense have been able to pounce, right? Is that the formula in this sort of game? I don't know the answer to this. What I do know is, I think this game's magnified. Listen, you have a team that was a full rebuild. They got rid of Russell Wilson. Sean Payton, his first year there looked like a buffoon, even though I think he's a very good coach, obviously. And they go out and they don't get the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd quarterback in the NFL. They in the draft in April, they go out, they get Bo Nix, a guy with a ton of experience. who fits exactly what Sean Payne wanted to do. So if you're the Colts, you sat there and you've been trying to build towards this, and Denver kind of did a quick rebuild, and very well, if they win on Sunday, could be in the postseason as well. Cortland Sutton, people will know his name. Obviously, he has 63 catches on the year. He's pretty good. They've been a three-headed back on the running back. They kind of been back and forth. Like, you never know, and I know this from fantasy football and from watching, of course, but people remember Javonte Williams, right? He had some injury issues. He's had games where he hasn't carried the ball, and he has other games where he has been the workhorse. Jaleel McLaughlin, he's out there, and then your boy from Notre Dame.
Mr. Estime.
He's been out there. He's
Can you
played in
imagine a
9
backfield
games.
of Estime and Jeremiah Love last year?
Oh, I know. Imagine
That's some
that.
thunder and lightning.
Imagine that. So it's going to be an interesting game, but you're right. I mean, defensively, they're one of the top defenses. Bo Nix, if he's not first, he's going to be second on the Rookie of the Year on the offensive side. And they're a team that can run the football. They'll probably have 3 guys go over 500-600 yards this year.
And one thing to note on Bo Nix, I think there can be a misconception sometimes you see with rookie quarterbacks that don't take a lot of sacks. They just get it out really quickly. Bo Nix doesn't do that. I think he's 6th right now in time to throw, like holds on to it, as long as pretty much every other quarterback in the league, minus those 5 guys. So, that is something to note of, like, he will give you some chances.
Sure.
And if you watch the big 90-yarder to Marvin Mims last week, I mean, that was a ball right over in the middle of the field. That was an opportunity for the defense. So these are 2 young quarterbacks that are not gun-shy. So that is another angle to this one. Again, Stephen Holder going to join us here in 5.
Yeah, Bo Nix, 64% completion percentage, so not too bad on him. You mentioned it. Coming up on the other side, how did the Colts get the win on Sunday? Maybe an update on Josh Downs. Stephen Holder, ESPN.com. He joins us next. Hour number 2 around the corner, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
All right, Colts back to practice today. Again, they return from their bye week. They will have a Wednesday practice. They've done a lot of walkthroughs leading in to that bye week, but they'll practice, and I assume they'll practice outdoors. Again, weather doesn't look too bad coming up Sunday. What'd you say, high of 52, Andy, out in Denver?
Yeah, it's going to be better weather than here in Indianapolis. It's going to be sunny and in the 50s. Game time. How about that?
Cannot beat that. A man
Come
that will
on.
be out there. And to talk more about this big-time matchup in Week 15, he is Stephen Holder of ESPN. Stephen, let's start here. What was the best thing you did on your bye week?
The best thing I did was I didn't do a damn thing because I was exhausted. I mean, I will say, and I would normally try to do something like, maybe we take a ride to Chicago or something, but I don't know if the road trips have been kind of condensed to somewhat the middle and the back end of the season this year. And I feel like I haven't been home for a weekend in like 3 years. I don't know what it is, but in any event, I needed the break. It is weird, though, I will tell you, kind of being at home on Sunday and just watching football and not having to actually care about it. It was kind of fun, actually. I like that.
Did you watch the Red
Zone? Try that sometime.
Did you watch the Red Zone? Because KB said he never watches the Red Zone, and the rest of us, that's what we're watching. We have two TVs. We got the Colts on one TV.
I gotta watch the Colts. Why would I pay for the Red Zone?
I know. I got the Colts on one TV and the Red Zone on the other. That's how I'm doing it every Sunday.
So it turns out I actually have the Red Zone, and I guess I didn't even realize this, but I do. And I did
there you go.
Watch a little bit of it, and I'm gonna tell you, it's a mixed bag for me. There's a lot going on, and it's not conducive with my ADD. I think. I don't know.
Fair enough.
It's a
drug.
mixed bag.
Yeah, it is. There's no doubt about it. Stephen Holder with us from ESPN.com on the Payless Liquors hotline. Besides the odds to make the playoffs, right, this week, and I guess really this month, the next 4 weeks, what is at stake big picture, do you think, for the Colts, if anything?
Well, I think it will determine sort of the flavor of this season. I guess how we view this season. Let's put it that way. Because at 6 and 7, you're kind of in this no man's land. What do we really think about that? And not only that, not only the record, but also I think how they have played. They've played well at times. They've played awful at other times. I think they have a chance to kind of define who and what they are as a team, the Colts, in these final 4 games. If they finish this off strong, like a 3-1 stretch, I mean, really, they need to go 4-0 if they really want to leave no doubt. But anyway, let's not get greedy. Let's say they go 3-1. I think that gets you to 9 wins, and it at least it kind of says something at least about the season. I don't think it solves all the problems, but I think it at least leaves them with the trajectory being up at the end of the season, which is positive. I think that would matter a lot. If the trajectory at the end of the season is downward, I think that also says a lot, and maybe that sort of changes how we view the off season and how they operate in the off season.
Again, he is Stephen Holder from ESPN. He's with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Stephen, self-scouting during the bye week. I'm sure Shane Steichen spent a lot of time on that.
Yeah.
Any wrinkle or two you are, projecting maybe the Colts to have in the final 4 weeks? Let me throw one at you. I don't think it's maybe an overwhelming wrinkle, but do we see like more Will Mallory at tight end for Kylan Granson? Just like things like that of, whether it's personnel or scheme. They've ran Anthony Richardson a ton lately. All right. What wrinkles do we see off of that? Do we see any, trickeration? I know is kind of a big word, but anything off of that? Obviously defensively, not very good the last time out. What do we see there? Anything, you're looking forward to here in the final 4 weeks?
I think the Mallory thing is a good point. Not to steal your idea, but yes, I do think they've got to do something to mix things up in terms of his targets because they're trying to. One thing that Shane Steichen does is he tries to get the ball to a lot of different guys. You always notice that they will finish a game with like 7 different guys catching a ball or something. The problem is they've got to be reliable receivers, and you can't just do this like at a charity. And so I don't think those other guys have necessarily earned more touches in that tight end room. If anything, there have been some questions about whether they should get the ball much at all. And so Will Mallory, for me at least, is a guy I want to see more of, just because he has a skill set that not many of those guys have, maybe none of them, frankly. And he also hasn't had a chance to drop the ball, figuratively speaking, right? They've done that literally and figuratively in that tight end room. So I'm interested to see if he can do something. I also think there are ways to maybe build upon what they've done with Anthony as a runner. I love what they have done when they have used that occasional option play with Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor. That has broken a couple of big runs and actually has given them a couple of really clutch first downs when they had to have it. I'm interested to see if they can maybe build on that. And I don't know. Let's see if he can maybe find some little niches with that quarterback run game, because I think that's been their best friend lately, frankly. That's the thing they have to lean into. It doesn't mean do it more. It just means do it better and more creatively.
Stephen Holder with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Any gut feeling on any of the injured players, especially Josh Downs, going into this game?
Not particularly. I guess the other guy, Ryan Kelly, we were told before the bye that there was a good chance that he could be back. So that seems hopeful. And just with the state of the offensive line, they were down to their third center anyway. So, I mean, that would be a boost. Josh Downs, though, is the big one. I think they didn't seem overly concerned about the injury in terms of long term, but we'll see. I really can't predict on that one. But I do think what I will say is this: they really got to have him. Like, this is not breaking news, but what I would say is that it was so reinforced in that New England game, because you had to put other guys in there, especially with them not having Ashton Doolin in that game, and then you had to rely so much more on A.D. Mitchell. And I'm sorry, he's just not ready for prime time right now. He's just not. And I don't take any pleasure in saying that, because I was actually very curious whether, maybe he could give them something here down the stretch, because they had kind of pulled back on his reps because he wasn't necessarily giving him any consistency. But I thought, well, okay, let's see what he's been doing in practice. Maybe he's made some strides. And I just don't think he's there yet. And I think the New England game further demonstrated that. And it's unfortunate, because his skill set is so tantalizing. But these games are too important. And I'm sorry, you can't put the ball in his hands right now, because you can't trust him. And that's just a really tough thing to have to admit.
Colts and Broncos, Week 15, that line hovering right around 3 or 4 here, coming up 425. That's a Bronco favorite for those curious. Coming up 425 on Sunday. Steven, last one from me. It's probably the question that I get the most right now. I have a feeling that probably a lot of my mentions kind of mirror yours, and that is, people are curious, does this Final Four games impact Chris Ballard at all? And again, predicting Jim Irsay, it's like predicting, Tiger Woods is back. I mean, it's, pretty impossible to try and do. But I am curious this thought, because of how much the division means to Jim Irsay, how much obviously a home playoff game would mean. If they were to lose on Sunday and Houston wins, Houston's got Miami at home. That's not a given. But the Colts would be eliminated from the playoffs eliminated from the division, I should say, with 3 weeks to go. And I feel like if you told Jim Irsay that at the start of the season, he probably wouldn't like that. I mean, 3 weeks to go in the season and you're already eliminated from the AFC South, when it's not like Houston is, 13-2 or, off to this whatever crazy start. So I guess I bring that up to say, like, what do you think that hypothetical would have on the owner in regards to how he views this season and I guess the GM in general?
Well, it doesn't help the resume, that's for sure. And, that's obvious. I get it. And I don't have a great answer, but I would say this is going to be an interesting season I think, for Jim Irsay to kind of take in, okay? Because there have been sort of mitigating circumstances in the past. Last year, all right, fine. They were coming off a 4-12 season. They took it down to the wire, right? I mean, it was really hard to be pissed off about last season if you were a reasonable fan, right? I think if you look at 2 years ago, certainly in 2022, it's awful. We don't have to recap that. They fired Frank Reich, et cetera. But the calculation there was, okay, I'm going to let Chris Ballard have a chance to rebuild this and get us back on the right track. Last year would suggest they were on the right track. I wonder, how does Jim Irsay see this season? And that's the really hard question. You just mentioned, like, predicting what he's going to do is always hard. It is hard, especially because this is such a weird season. Like, I don't know if this team is good, bad, mediocre. Like,
it's such a good point, Stephen. It's such a good point. Yeah, what are they?
Yeah, I know, and that's the problem. The fact that we're asking that question is not a positive. Is the problem. I think even if they end up 9-8, I mean, that's a good record in the grand scheme. But what is the trajectory of the team? I don't know that, and that is the question that Jim Irsay has to confront. No matter what the offseason looks like, you can't just say we're fine and you can't just run it back like you did last year if you barely get to 9-8. When last year you got to 9-8, I thought in a more impressive manner, right? So I think you have to really look at things holistically if you're Jim Irsay from the top down, because for me, this question has to be, what is the trajectory of this team? Where are we going? And I don't know if that has a positive answer right now.
With the win, the playoff odds skyrocket to over 60%. With the loss, they drop to less than 10%. It is as big as you can get in Week 15, particularly with two teams not in the same division. It's big for Denver as well. So that will be the matchup coming up, 425 out there in Mile High. Steven, safe travels. Hope you had a good bye week, and I will see you later this morning.
All right, guys. See you soon.
Stephen Holder, that is ESPN right there. You want to play off that a little bit? Like that thought in general, Andy, of, again, the magic number for the Texans to win the division is 2. And I don't know if I think Houston's going to beat Miami, if I can be totally honest with you.
Listen, I don't believe in Houston at all. I think they can go into the playoffs and get smoked in the first round.
But,
I do.
I mean, they do have a path to clinch this week.
Yeah, they do. They could clinch.
It's as simple as that.
No,
now,
it's
again,
disappointing.
Houston's finish is Miami, at Kansas City, Baltimore, and at Tennessee. So the next 3 weeks, I mean, it's 3 potential playoff teams. Obviously, Kansas City and Baltimore, you expect to be in the playoffs. But what would that thought do to Jim Irsay? Because, you almost have to look at the season in 2 different buckets. One, it's through the prism of Anthony Richardson and direction of your franchise and et cetera, et cetera. But I do think the other prism matters in that, okay, what about the playoffs? Because, again, Houston is 8-5. It's not like they are, where Kansas City or Buffalo or Pittsburgh is in the other 3 divisions. How do you think Irsay would view possibly being eliminated with 3 weeks to go?
Well, think about this. It would be eliminated by Houston early, like we've talked about it, with 3 games still remaining on the schedule. But it also, KB, there's a couple other factors here. One of the factors is you would be eliminated by a team of the Denver Broncos that has a rookie quarterback. I mean, it's not like they got Peyton Manning. It's not like they have an established quarterback and they've been an established team in the AFC West now for 5 or 6 years. I mean, this is a team that has, tried the Russell Wilson thing, had a new coach, a team that had been, quite frankly, in disarray over the last couple years. There have been talks of them trading off pieces. I mean, let's be honest where Denver was before this season. Denver was a laughingstock in the NFL, and for them to draft Bo Nix, have a good coach, turn things around, make the playoffs, and beat you in a mid-December game to really catapult them to the playoffs is a problem. It would be a problem because now, you don't win the AFC South anyway, and now it's, of course, the Houston Texans that would win it back-to-back years, and it's not like Houston hasn't had adversity. They have had big-time injuries. They have a big-time suspension. So it's not like that they've had a smooth season to where they've had to gut out some games, and they're going to have to gut out some games down the stretch, I think, and Sunday may be one of those. And then, Steven talked about it there. I guess where I would disagree with him is, they can't go 3-1. If they lose to Denver, it's over. So then they win the next 3. They're probably not, they're not going to make the playoffs probably. And then if you beat Denver and you lose one of the next 3, you're losing to either the New York Giants, okay, who have been embarrassing, who haven't won a game at home, or you're losing to Will Levis, who scored 6 points and lost to Jacksonville, or you're losing to Jacksonville with Mac Jones. So imagine missing out on the playoffs, KB, because you lost to Mac Jones, Drew Lock, or whatever the hell they're going to throw out there in Tennessee, right? And one of those, a couple home games, you have a chance to lose at home. I mean, can you imagine? There'd be boo birds. If you lose to the Titans or you lose to Jacksonville at home, there's going to be boo birds. So, I mean, listen, the only other thing I'll say, I am disappointed that we're having the conversation, and Steven's right about A.D. Mitchell. I'm disappointed he's a 0 this season. That's disappointing. I didn't need him to be my leading receiver. I didn't need him to have 10 touchdowns. But, I mean, we're going to end this year with him having, he's got 20 catches right now, KB. 23 catches? 25 catches? There's a good chance, I know he was close to getting into the end zone, that he ends this season 25 catches, no touchdowns. That's disappointing to me.
Yeah, and certainly some opportunities that have come his way. We'll see how much that opportunity is this week. Again, the Josh Downs shoulder injury. We'll keep an eye on. Colts get back to practice later today. That 4:25 slate, we brought this up earlier in the show. How about these 4 games at 4:25 coming up on Sunday? Again, no more bye weeks in the NFL. Colts, Broncos, Lions, Bills, Steelers, Eagles.
Oh, dude, they're good,
and I think
man.
Bucks, Chargers is a decent game.
Oh, sure it is. And I know, the game that no one cares about is Patriot Cardinals, but the Cardinals are fighting for a chance for the playoffs, so that even has implications. It's the best 4 o'clock slate we've had of the season, and quite frankly, it's not close.
We've gotten a lot of these 2-game 4 o'clock slates. And
they're terrible.
Or 3 and 2 of them are dud, and
they're
you're
terrible
just stuck
games.
on one of them. Again, Thursday night, it is Rams and 49ers. Do you want to give some Pacers thoughts here in a little bit? I thought it was interesting that over Pacers practice yesterday, Jeremiah Johnson threw a question to Tyrese Halliburton of you were 13-12 at this point last season. I mean, in the grand scheme of an 82-game schedule, 3 games does not sound like that big of a difference. They're 10-15 right now. They were 13-12 this time last year. Tyrese definitely didn't take the bait, though, on that, and I certainly agree with him.
Yeah, nor should he.
But isn't that kind of weird, though, just how different
the
start of last – obviously you had the in-season tournament. Last night we saw 2 teams clinch their spots in Vegas. So at this point last year, the Pacers were doing that. They were about to be, not only in Vegas, but obviously they beat the Bucks there and got to the finals there. And I thought Halliburton had an interesting answer in regards to the amped-up physicality in the NBA. You would think a player like him maybe wouldn't want to see that, but no, he's pretty adamant that the league needed to do that. So how do the Pacers counter that moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the expectations last year were not what they are this year. That's the answer.
And they have.
That's just the answer. It is what it is.
And they have had the easiest schedule in the NBA at this point.
Yeah.
Which
they've lost to bad teams. A lot of bad teams.
Well, not just bad teams. I would say injured teams.
Yeah, bad and injured teams. I mean, twice to Charlotte, once to Orlando. Go down the list. Bad and injured teams. Consistently, they've lost to those teams. It's worrisome. It's more than, quite frankly, it's more than worrisome.
You see this, Ryan Walters is offering, if Barry Odom wants it, advice on some of the players on the roster. I totally forgot that Ryan Walters was a member of Barry Odom's staff at Missouri.
Yeah, I know you mentioned that. I totally forgot about that as well. I'm fine with that. If I'm a Purdue fan, there is a part of me that wants Ryan Walters just to go away. Is that wrong of me? I mean, he come across as a bad guy. He never had
breaking down Kurt Cignetti and Marcus Freeman
He never had a terrible press conference, but the guy won 1 football game this year. Maybe I don't want my new coach to rely at all on any percentage-wise the evaluation of what Ryan Walters thinks. Plus, a lot of guys are going to hit the portal anyway. Did you see Marshall's entire team hit the portal? Or almost 96% of their team? The Huff guy. Remember we talked to Tom Dienard a week or 2 ago about him?
I remember him. He beat Notre Dame the day Max Bowen was born.
Of course. How can I think that? He took another job. Was it
I don't
Southern
know if there's
Miss?
a day in my life that has been as glorious and as worse in the same time.
I forgot about that. Anyway, he left Marshall, went to Southern Miss, I think it was. The entire Marshall team said, we're going to put our names. Imagine the administrative assistant that has to do all that paperwork for 100 and some guys to put their name in the transfer portal yesterday. How about that?
It almost seems like who's not in the portal at this point might be the easier way to go. Barry Odom will not call the defensive plays. I think there were some questions on that end, so he will CEO it up a little bit more. Yeah, I kind of got the impression watching the press conference yesterday of like, oh boy, he is like super blue collar. He's kind of Purdue-y.
You think he's Purdue-y? Okay.
You know, when I think of like Purdue, I don't know if I don't think of like Kurt Cignetti personalities necessarily at Purdue. I mean, like, I love listening to Matt Painter. It's not like Matt Painter's like, jumping on tables and.
Well, he's not saying IU sucks.
Right.
Yeah. He's not saying Maryland sucks. Yeah, that's not Matt Painter's
again,
flow.
He's super candid, and
Sure,
he
he's
was
very
listening
good.
to him yesterday with John.
He's a great interview.
It's a great listen, but it's just a little bit more of a blue collar, reserve football guy type of nature when you get to hear Barry Odom talk.
Who's blue collar? Am I blue collar? Are you blue collar? Corbin, are you? Like, who's blue collar? We say that with coaches. What other profession do we say that with other than coaches?
Well, I think you think of like people that actually like do real work and not just
they're like outside working with their hands, can actually put stuff together.
Right.
Okay, yeah, fair.
It's fair. I mean, I don't want to speak for Corbin, but I don't think us two in this studio would be. I mean, hell, we went over how to get a stain out of pants earlier today.
We can't do anything.
You think blue collar people are asking people about that?
Corbin line dances.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Did you know that?
I did.
We need Corbin to teach us how to line dance someday. To get him on camera doing that.
We could rock a little YouTube action on
could
that.
do that.
Tony East coming up at 9 o'clock. If you missed it earlier, we had Sean Gregory, who wrote the piece on Caitlin Clark in Time Athlete of the Year. I thought the most enlightening Caitlin Clark piece yet, and I enjoyed the conversation with Sean. Spent a week here in Plainfield, Indiana.
He was good.
Rebounded for Caitlin Clark over at the practice facility. So I thought that was a fun interview. We'll have that up on the podcast. Andy, are you leading off at Hinkle? You leading off in West Lafayette? Hinkle was ugly.
I know. Let's do West Lafayette before we get to the massacre in Hinkle last night. Go ahead, Corbin.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by Butler Bulldogs Basketball. Saturday, December 21st, Hinkle Fieldhouse will be rocking as the Dogs battle defending national champion UConn. Be there by visiting butlersports.com/buy tickets.
Yeah, quickly. So Barry Odom yesterday met the media, obviously, was introduced as the next Purdue football head coach. I thought one question all the fans here would want to hear. He was asked, are UNLV players going to follow him? We see that a lot. We saw that James Madison to Indiana to Bloomington, where Kirk Cinetti. Here's what Barry Odom had to say.
We will have a number of guys that will want to follow us from the different stops that I've been, or maybe have missed out in a recruiting battle with somebody there somewhere else, and then they want to come back and play for me and for our staff. So that's ongoing, and the portal is open. There will be guys that have an opportunity to get in, and we'll have conversations at that point. I would look at the opportunity for some of those guys that have interest in doing that I would certainly be open to the conversation.
Yeah, obviously UNLV guys, and I thought what he said interesting there is you recruit a kid, it doesn't work out, and then a year or two later, right, they're ready, 2 or 3 years later, they transfer, you kept that good relationship, you get a second shot. So we'll see what happens, but Barry Odom announced yesterday to the Purdue faithful there in West Lafayette.
All right, not a lot of nightly action this week here from a sports viewing standpoint, but Hinkle did have some action last night, and it is a bad stain on the Butler resume. North Dakota State comes into Hinkle. Warned you yesterday, they shoot a ton of threes, and they did that, and they made a ton, especially in the first half. Jakari White was outstanding. Him and Jackson Money combined for 52 of North Dakota State's 71 points. They upset Butler 71-68. For those that weren't following this game, Butler was down, I think it was 21 at half, I believe.
It was 44-23 at half.
23, I think, was the biggest margin. Butler comes roaring back in the second half. They actually take a 5-point lead with just a couple minutes left, and then they don't make a single play down the stretch. North Dakota State finishes the game on a 9-1 run. Butler's Augusto Cassia also went down with kind of an ugly-looking injury, so we'll see about that. But, we talked about it to lead off the show. Butler has some nice wins early in the season, 2 of them away from home. They could get another with Wisconsin on Saturday. But, Andy, when we start to nitpick resumes,
they're in trouble.
If you've got a quad 4 and a quad 3,
they're in trouble.
Both on your home floor, that is what the committee looks for as some major warts. So Butler is going to need a lot in the quad 1 department here in the final couple months of the season.
Yeah, not good for them. So
they only had 4 turnovers last night. I thought that would be the downfall for them.
It's such a bad loss right now. Again, the Big Ten projected just 3 or 4. Big Ten, Big East, just 3 or 4 teams in the tournament. So How many tournament teams are you going to actually beat in conference play? Quickly, Bucks over the Magic, Thunder over the Mavs last night in your NBA Cup, the quarterfinals there. You got anything else?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that I went back and clarified. I misspoke on the tip times coming up for the Indy Classic on Saturday. I flipped them around. Purdue is in the first game, so that's the CBS window. Purdue and Texas A&M at noon, and then 2:30 is Butler, Wisconsin. That's Big Ten Network there. So I think in years past we're kind of used to more of the marquee, the Purdue or the Indiana of it in the second game. But it'll be Purdue, A&M. That's Buzz Williams at noon. And Wisconsin lost last night. Was it Illinois?
They did, 86-80. Yep.
And so they have got Butler coming up 2:30. That is over at Gainbridge Fieldhouse on Saturday.
Reminder, at 9 o'clock, Tony East will join us. But coming up on the other side is today finally the day we'll explain. And if you haven't seen the video, KB, you need to check this out during the break. Brett Favre was confronted over what? We'll explain that as well. Appreciate you waking up with us. It's a Wednesday on The Fan.
Well, safe travels on the afternoon commute. Yeah, no issues this morning. No fog like we had yesterday, but it sounds like the snow squalls.
Oh, yeah,
That's
the
what they're saying.
squalls. Okay.
Keep an eye out
All
for
right.
that this afternoon. Again, viewing-wise.
Come
We got
on.
some high school sports here, although I am a little nervous in South Bend. All these people, Notre Dame, IU, college. You think I'm worried about that? I got Notre Dame, Dartmouth tonight. That's what we're worried about.
Yeah.
We got to
to
stretch beating Syracuse into beating Dartmouth.
That's a big one. This is
Dartmouth beat Boston College
did
earlier
they?
this year, so could be a sneaky one for the Irish.
This has nothing to do with Notre Dame. It's going to sound this way, but it has nothing to do with Notre Dame. Just the last several years. Man, what the hell's happened to Syracuse basketball? I mean, remember Syracuse basketball was always at the top? Boy, they are rough. They are a rough watch.
Notre Dame needed that. the
Good
other
job
nights.
paddling them on Saturday.
By the way, and I know Jake Query's talked about this from noon to 3. I want to give
boy.
a shout out to Taylor University, Upland, Indiana. Did you see video of the court storm
I did.
of Silent Night?
I did. I know Jake went. He had pretty good seats. That's a difficult ticket to get, obviously.
So I've watched the video, every
Sure.
year.
Oh,
Again,
yeah, sure.
They're silent. They score
Yeah.
10 points. On the 10th point, everybody erupts.
That's
and
great, yeah.
It's just a great scene. I think this year they did it in 90 seconds into the game. Kid dunked it for the 10th point. I'm like, that's like a movie script. The efficiency that they run out on the court.
Oh, it's calculated.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
It looked like a bunch of Tyreek Hills sprinting to midcourt with how fast they got out there.
It did, yeah.
I was nervous if the other team got all 5 of them off the floor.
Yeah, now, I can't remember. Jake told the story. I did hear it. Did someone... He had to go all the way to, the school, basically, to try to get a ticket. He could not get a ticket. In all the Jake Query ways, he could not get a ticket. He had to actually bend the knee and go to the university, go to the school and say, hey, is there anything you can do for me? How about that?
Sounds like the NFL Combine when he got turned away at 6:58 in the morning.
Hey, listen.
He's out in the hallway yelling, "Do you know who I am?"
It's the one thing I did remember.
He was not, but I was really hoping he was.
my credential. The other thing about the Combine people need to know in February, and Corbin, you'll like this, there's all these lunatics that line up to go running in the morning in February in the cold. You remember that? Do you had to walk through those people to get into the convention center?
Oh, yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah,
what are
yeah,
you
yeah.
guys doing?
Yeah,
All
they're-
stretching out and everything? Like, what are we doing, guys? It's 5 a.m.
They're out there every Wednesday morning.
Ugh.
I'm like, I can't believe how many people they are.
That was 100 of them. Yeah, it was
I
unbelievable.
have not listened to this Brett Favre audio. Is it,
Okay.
is it good?
Okay, so let's do 2 stories here. I'm going to give you my daily, at least in the morning, Bill Belichick update.
Oh, okay.
In North Carolina. So that's number 1. Bill Belichick yesterday, the news is he gave a 400-page manifesto to North Carolina, to UNC, over how he's going to run his program. And it's just, I don't know, it's just beyond fantastic. 400 pages. Can you imagine these country club UNC chancellors having to read and going
32
through 400
pages on executing a coffin corner punt with 3 minutes to go in the game.
Oh, goodness. Did Mac Brown, did he have 400 pages when they brought him
I
out
saw
of
he has a
retirement?
pro
Remember
and
that?
a college version to the organizational
Wow,
Bible.
You better believe it. So I kind of want to leaf through the organizational Bible of Bill Belichick. So that is out there. That was my tease. It could happen today, one way or the other. We could find out if he's going back to college.
The reports are he's made it very clear that there is no negotiating his demands. You either take the 400 pages, or if you disagree with page 376, sorry about you.
Sorry about your
And
luck.
I read somewhere where there's a sitting college GM. You brought up Chad Bowden for Notre Dame, the son of course, Jim Bowden.
Barry Odom talked about that yesterday, too. Yeah,
so a
sounds
lot
like
of
they're
these-
going to have one, kind of.
A lot of these schools obviously have, Andrew Luck's GM role a little bit different, but it sounded like Belichick has a college GM at some other school that needs to be bought out to come to North Carolina. And again, there's no debating this.
No.
You have to go get that guy.
You buy him out. What if it's your guy? I mean, I don't know who it is.
Gosh, I didn't even think about that.
What if it's your guy?
Oh, boy.
But,
Now I'm gonna look to see if Jim Bowden crossed paths at all with
you better
Belichick.
get those donations up in the Bowen household. You want to keep some of these guys. So that's number 1. The second thing is, I don't know. Did ESPN, I think ESPN put this out there. If you remember, there was a 30 for 30 on the sack record going back to 2001. For people that don't remember, in 1984, a man by the name of Mark Gastineau, he set the record. This is going back to 1984. He had 22 sacks in a season. I'm sure everyone remembers this. In 2001, and the Giants stunk then, okay? I'm 17 years old. In 2001, the stinky New York Giants in the final game of the year, Michael Strahan was a half sack short. He was at 21 and a half sacks. Brett Favre takes a snap. You remember this play, don't you, KB? You've seen this 100 times, okay? And he kind of does a rollout, and he basically lays down. Michael Strahan gets the sack and gets the record, okay? So that's going back to 2001. Since then, Gastineau has done some interviews and has been, at the time he was gracious, but has been rather heated as the years have went by about this, feeling Brett Favre has ripped him off. And I'm sure the last couple years, Brett Favre, it's shown how much of a scuzzy human being he is. I'm sure it's been easier for Gastineau to be even angrier. So this sound is about a year ago in Chicago at one of these autograph trade shows, memorabilia shows. Have you ever been to any of these, KB? You know, they bring in these guys, they pay them a bunch of money, they're there for a couple hours, and they just sign autographs the entire time.
Yeah,
okay?
I have not been, but I went to that card shop on 96th Street. It is crazy how intense some of these people are with trading cards.
Oh, 1,000%. So
I mean, they've got microscopes and they've got lights and they're bending the cards and everything.
So Gastineau, he confronts Brett Favre. The sound you'll hear, and there's a other guy standing there that kind of stops it, but Gastineau confronts Brett Favre. They shake hands, or he actually doesn't shake Favre's hand. And take a listen to this back and forth. This was released yesterday.
You met a long time ago. At least I saw you.
Right.
How you doing?
When you fell down for him. I'm going to get my sack back. I'm going to get my sack back, dude.
You probably would hurt me.
Well, I don't care. You hurt me. You hurt me. You hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
You really hurt me. You hurt me, Brett.
We got to get back to this, Brett. I'm sorry.
And so that's the sound that's worked its way around. Now, Favre yesterday, and I'm not going to read all of this, released, and listen, Favre has been under fire the last couple years, and rightfully so. He released a pretty heartfelt 6 or 7 tweets yesterday, KB, on X, Twitter X, basically saying, hey, I wasn't trying to, hurt anybody when this happened all the way back in 2001. I have a lot of respect for Gastineau. He needs to be in the Hall of Fame. I respect him, basically kind of apologizing as well, saying, now he understands maybe, some of his Gastineau can't, he's not the sack leader anymore, right? In a single season, maybe some of his worth in signing autographs and memorabilia has went down. So I don't know. If you see it on Twitter, you should take a watch and a listen, because it's 20 seconds of Gastineau's basically in the face of Brett Favre in public.
Boy, I went back and watched the play as you were bringing that up. I forgot how much Favre just totally bent the knee in this situation.
And that is a Giants team that I need to go back. I mean, we're talking about a 6-7 win team.
Are up 9.
Yeah,
with
it's over.
2:50 to go in the game and have the ball.
Yeah, the game's over.
Up 9 to 2:50 to go in the game, and you call a passing play?
Hey, listen, it's over. Listen, I'm a Giants fan. It is a lay down. There is no doubt about it. And Strahan actually doesn't talk too much about the record because he knows he had 21 and a half sacks that year, not 22 and a half. He gets it. I remember as a kid, basically ending high school, junior into senior year of high school. I remember watching that. I don't know who the quarterback was, maybe a Kent Graham or a Dave Brown. The Giants were terrible that year.
I think it was Kerry Collins for this game.
Was it Kerry? It could have been Kerry Collins as well. Yeah.
Shout out to Colts legend Kerry Collins. That is. How
about that?
That was quite the memory. Gastineau was super emotional there.
I mean, he's like on the verge of crying.
Swings at Favre.
Some people might be okay with that. I like how, Corbin, there's no offense to you, I like bringing that up when Mark's not here, because he would be chiming in on his hate for the Packer, just the whole Packer thing.
But you were probably all about it as a Giants fan.
Well, I mean, I thought at the time, I'm 17.
Michael deserved it, you said.
I thought at the time that he laid down. I still think he laid down. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
I mean, it's more than just the lay down. Why are the Packers calling a pass play up 9 to 2 minutes to go in the game?
And they were good friends. Strahan and Favre were obviously good friends, so not surprised that happened.
He'd be side by side, Strahan and the pace car coming up in May.
I don't think you're bringing Brett Favre back.
Gastineau runs out of the snake pit.
He runs out of the snake pit,
wagging his finger at Strahan as he goes by 130 miles per hour.
You
in
wanted
turn 3.
drama at the Indy 500. There you go. You got a
got
little
it.
bit of
Yeah.
drama. Mike Babinski said something yesterday that I disagreed with and that I kind of agreed with. There's something happening in college athletics, and Babinski actually kind of brought it up yesterday. I want to get to that. Plus, Tony East, he joins us at 9 o'clock. Appreciate you waking up with us on a Wednesday. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Pacers updates coming a little over 10 minutes. Was out at practice yesterday. Doesn't sound like any returns too soon for some of their injured guys. What could be the plan at center? We'll discuss. Tony East going to join us here in 10. It's kind of funny. I was, I feel like maybe it was Tyson Lawton I saw mention yesterday, the IU running back, how if those JMU guys would have stayed, and if Kurt Cignetti, I guess, would have stayed at JMU, they'd be in the playoff as well.
Oh, it's such a great point. Yeah. No matter what Cignetti was making this damn playoff. That's a great point.
Which, we didn't get that this year with the group of five. Again, Boise State is the group of five representative. Some people debated very late for Army. I mean, Notre Dame beat the doors off of them. They didn't, have any great wins outside of maybe Tulane.
It was pretty cut and dry, wasn't it?
Right. But it is kind of interesting. Like, will we ever get the group of five debate? Will we ever get the Cinderella
Hey, I'm fine with that.
debate?
Yeah, let's go.
Because JMU,
sure.
They went 8-4 this year, and they beat North Carolina. It's
That's
not like
too
they
bad,
fell off a cliff without Cignetti. It's like, can you imagine if he would have been there and they would have gotten the bye? I know we've talked a good amount about Indiana and Notre Dame coming up again a week from Friday. Do you have any general game thoughts? I know we've obviously addressed a lot of my fandom, but I think it's an ugly game, don't you? In terms of the line, in terms of advantages, one way or the other. I think both of these teams fall into a bit of a category of what do you look like against really real competition? I think both of them, struggled to either have that on their schedule or in Indiana's case, probably the one team you would call the marquee opponent. They obviously didn't play well. Notre Dame's got the ugliest loss of all losses. Granted, it was now 3 months ago. Is that still in there? Is it not in there? Just general game thoughts.
Yeah, so the over-under on this game is at 50.5, and that has went down, and I'm not surprised that's went down a little bit since it opened. So I think I would play the under. That's how I read this game. I read this game, don't you, as, you're going to get good defense, you're going to get running of the football, and I'm not sure you're just going to get a ton of big plays. I could be way wrong on that. I think if I'm an Indiana fan, the one thing that I cannot accept is what happened against Ohio State, and that is you helped Ohio State beat you. You had the muffed punt. You set up a score at the end there. You have nothing going offensively. And then he talked about it. You kick the ball you're supposed to kick the ball to the right. You kicked it to the left. I think it was the other way. You're supposed to kick it to the left. You kicked it to the right, and you allow that kick return, the punt return. So, doing those little things, I want to see Indiana when they're not giving 2 touchdowns to the opposition. I know KBU obviously feel the opposite way. And then, don't you have to, and you would know this, how many teams have actually been able to do this? Don't you have to make Riley Leonard throw the ball a little bit to beat you?
Certainly.
Just a little bit.
Certainly.
If you let Notre Dame get in 2nd and 3s and they're able to run the football and then they can get those first downs by running, Riley Leonard's a big, tall guy. What is he, 6'4", 6'5"? He can lean forward and get 3 yards and keeps Curtis Rourke off the field. So, will Notre Dame be able to kind of stay in their bubble of how they play offense? And then for Indiana, good God, man, you cannot spot Notre Dame a couple scores like you did Ohio State. You just can't.
Yeah, when you talk about fourth quarter pressure, obviously Notre Dame felt a little bit of that against USC, but it's been a while since they have felt it. And in Indiana's case, you certainly had it against Michigan, I would argue. Ohio State, I don't know. I think the game at that point was probably largely over, at least trending in that direction. So, when that fourth quarter arises, what does it look like? Because I do think Indiana's offense is probably the most balanced Notre Dame has seen all year.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I think that could test a Notre Dame defense that, again, struggled against USC, but for the most part has been very dominant really all year long. One advantage that I think Notre Dame does have on paper that is going to be an absolute must, I mentioned this to you earlier in the week, Notre Dame is, their top 2 edge rushers are out for the year, and their top cornerback is out for the year. But they are super stout at defensive tackle. Riley Mills and Howard Cross, in my opinion, is probably the best defensive tackle pairing in college football. I think they led all of college football in defensive tackle sacks this season. Well, what does Curtis Rourke struggle with? I would say he struggles a bit with mobility.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
If you create interior pressure, we've heard Peyton Manning say it a million times on the Manning cast. What did he hate most? Interior pressure. If that duo, and Cross has been out the last 3 weeks. Sounds like he'll play, but he has been out with an ankle injury. What does that do to Curtis Rourke? Now, of course, Indiana wants to counter with that and say, hey, we want to pound Lawton and Ellison and, keep the balance there. But I think that is a kind of an interesting subplot. Might not be the most sexy subplot in the world, but, if you get Rourke off his spot, is he still really the super accurate guy he's been all season?
27 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. I mean, that's a freak show type numbers.
Right.
They really are.
That would be a question that I would have.
Yeah, low scoring game, thinking the spread maybe a little bit too high, Notre Dame. That's kind of been the case. Again, this game opened at 52.5. It's down to 50.5. So all the early money, 2 points moving, that's a pretty good movement in less than a week. So you had that, and then again, it opened 8.5, and it's down to Notre Dame favored by 7.5. The public money usually will come in next week and more towards game time. I think the over-under could end up at 50 or even less, 49.5, and I think that will come down from 7.5 with Notre Dame.
Do you think this is the most competitive of the 4 first-round games, or do you point to something else?
Oh, I think it's very competitive. I still would lean. The game I'm most interested in is probably still Tennessee and Ohio State. I don't know. That's just
because
me.
Of Ryan Day venom or because of other stuff?
No, I don't hate Ryan Day like everybody else. I don't mind laughing at him. Now, that spread is 7.5 as well. I just happen to think Tennessee can walk in there and, if they win that game, what does it mean? I just think that's going to be a close game with a bunch of NFL players all over the field. What about you?
I want to believe in SMU and Happy Valley.
So if you ask me a team that I'm rooting for the most this weekend or next weekend, it's SMU.
Yeah.
To win that game.
And I think Texas should handle Clemson. I'm trying to kind of get away of like old Clemson aura. But I don't know. I feel like all 4 of these matchups kind of have a unique angle to them. But, I said it to you when the line came out, Andy. I thought the Notre Dame-Indiana line was a little high to begin with. I thought it should be a little bit closer on that end. And, again, I continue to laugh at some of these Notre Dame people that think it's going to be all Irish in there. I'm like, yeah, I don't think that secondary ticket market indicates that.
What is the read? Are Notre Dame fans cocky on this matchup, or they weren't? Because I think, no offense to you, I think you skew things. You're not the cocky, brash Notre Dame fan. You're more of a skeptical, worried
I think most Notre Dame fans are pretty cocky. I think there is still a segment that you get of the NIU game is never going to go away. And, like, to your point, can Riley Leonard deliver in the fourth quarter? Like Anthony Richardson, for example, has delivered for you in the fourth quarter of, these last 2 road games for the Colts. If you said to me, can Riley, did anyone watch the USC game? Leonard threw a horrific interception to get USC back in that game as Notre Dame was trying to put it away. Now again, Notre Dame hasn't needed Leonard to do that very often. Notre Dame is not very potent at wide receiver at all. So, what you said just a few minutes ago, Jeremiah Love's health, Jadarian Price, and Riley Leonard, that trio is a hell of a rushing attack, but Notre Dame has to establish that. Because if you get into a Leonard right arm fourth quarter, you might as well go over to the grotto and start praying.
You mentioned Clemson last day. You mentioned Clemson in Texas. That's an 11-point spread.
Is it really that big? Wow.
Clemson, the reason this game is scary is for Clemson and Clemson fans is Dabo is never going to learn his lesson because he made the college football playoff, right? It's like, do Colts fans want them to make the playoffs, right? Because then it honors and it says, what Chris Ballard's doing is the right thing. It's like that with Clemson. They have made the college football playoff. They beat nobody. They lost to Georgia by 31. They lost by 12 to Louisville at home and got dominated in that game, and they lost to South Carolina at the end of the year. They beat SMU in the ACC championship game. KB, that's all they've done. I understand why it's 11. Precedent the last couple years tells me that Texas blows Clemson out. And if that happens, what does that mean? We could leave this weekend with Dabo Swinney making the college football playoff and being the running joke.
Am I seeing this tweet right? Somebody tweeted a picture of Bill Belichick and the girlfriend and said, send this to people worried about Bill Belichick's ability to recruit.
I mean, she's 24. There will be a football player on his team in North Carolina.
Are you saying the perks she gets with Belichick are the same as the 17-year-old high school recruit?
Hey, listen.
I'm a little nervous about that.
There will be a player. Belichick takes a North Carolina job that will be because of the portal and the COVID year, whatever, injuries. There will be a player that will be as old as Bill Belichick's girlfriend on that team. Mark my words if he takes a North Carolina job. So that's something we can watch. Corbin, we'll give that to you. That's a job that you can break down. Let's take a break. Tony East, he joins us next.
If you missed it earlier, really enjoyed the conversation with Sean Gregory from Time Magazine. Don't know if we've ever had a guest from Time Magazine, Andy, join the show. He wrote the Athlete
not too much
of the Year piece on Caitlin Clark. I thought it was an outstanding read, and I thought Sean was very good with us, so that'll be up on the podcast. Joining him on that podcast will be our next guest, Tony East, locked on Pacers. He tries to make sense of it all with us here on this Wednesday morning. Tony, last time I talked to you, I believe you were building a deck. How's that coming along?
Very good. Everything except for the railings are in, but I took a couple-day break, so gonna wait till it gets nice and cold again on Thursday to restart, I believe.
Wait, you can do this stuff? Tony, you can do this? This is something you're able to do?
I require the assistance of my much more intelligent dad who loves these kind of things. But yes, I know how to do what I am told to do.
My father built our deck. Shout out to the great Brad Bowen. Incredibly handy. His youngest son has gotten just not an ounce of any of that.
I'm the
Tony,
same way. Wow.
Great work by you. I almost started off the convo with, would you rather answer questions about the Pacers or go hammer, some wood together in the backyard?
Answer questions about the Pacers every time. Yes, let's do that.
Okay, all right. Well, we can start here then with Tony. Let's start with center. Moses Brown waived. It sounds like the date of December 15th is something to keep an eye on. Are there teams that you're keeping an eye out for that have, depth at center? Because I'm thinking Miles Turner might need 13 fouls to get through Friday night against Joel Embiid.
Yeah, that's the toughest matchup for him. And look, I think it was pretty revealing that, like last week against Brooklyn, they had some, center stuff they need to figure out. They went to, the Enrique Freeman, Pascal Siakam front court, and then, Sunday, Nick Richards is out there for Charlotte. Miles Turner picks up his third foul. They go to Freeman again. Like, they're not, if you're not turning to Moses Brown in those moments, what's the point? So it made more sense for them, given how scary the luxury tax line is for them right now. And you're definitely not paying the tax if you're 10 and 15 to waive him and move on and go a different direction. But, yeah, I think that December 15th coming up and the timing of it with what they're allowed to do with a little more flexibility by doing it earlier than later does make sense to do it. And now they have an open roster spot if they want to just take someone in via trade and then not have to give up, another player to match salaries or something like that. So the thing that makes this such an interesting year is now that there's the new CBA implemented and teams are kind of blending what their old planning was with what the current reality of the league is there's a lot of teams that are kind of in the Pacers spot or even more expensive that are really close to the luxury tax or over it or whatever that aren't particularly awesome, right? They're maybe kind of good or something, but, Portland and Sacramento and Miami, 3 teams that have like lots of centers that either don't play or are pretty good and barely play that make the minimum and could be available. Like I would start looking at those teams in theory if the Pacers are going to make a small trade pretty soon. Bigger trades would probably happen later in the trade season, but looking at your Thomas Bryant, Dwap Reith, Orlando Robinson types would be the boring starting point for this exercise.
Tony East, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, it's IU legend
Thomas Bryant. Yeah. Beat Kentucky and Iowa. I remember. I was at that game. So there you go. Tony East with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. And listen, I know that the record, there's a lot of ways you could answer this. What has bothered you the most about the Pacers this season?
I mean, I would just say generically that they can't score because that was the whole theory of the team, right? And if you're supposed to be a top, name your number, I would say 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever offense, and you're 19th, I believe, right now, like the whole theory of what you're supposed to do falls apart. The problem with getting more specific in saying that is the reason they can't score seems to be different like every game, right? Like sometimes it's their bench stinks for a night for some reason, even though it's the same players who were good other nights. And sometimes it's Tyrese Halliburton hasn't been as good as last year or hasn't been very consistent this year. And other nights he has 30 points. And some nights it's Pascal Siakam recently for the first time. Like he was so consistent to start the year, but like he's had 2 of his worst probably 5 games of the season within their last couple. So the fact that it's so all over the place, and even there are nights where if you're just a fan, the unacceptable thing with effort, like how do you that's why it's so hard for me to figure out how they fix things, right? It's like they have so many holes in the sinking ship and they don't have enough ways to plug them. So they plug one and something else is leaking. And that's what's been so weird to me. It's like last year, that was never a problem. Even when they were playing their worst defensive game of the year and like they were missing 2 guys, they needed to rely on some bench dudes. Okay, well, they were going to score 128 points no matter what and give themselves a chance. That's how they were able to beat so many good teams last year. And yeah, they lost to some crummy teams too, which they're doing again. But they had this identity thing that they could play fast and they could score, and they gave themselves a chance. And this year, they're not giving themselves that chance. They have to have something go really right for them this year to have that happen. And, like, they just shot 18 for 29 from 3 and scored 132 in Chicago. And, like, they looked like themselves, but they were hot from deep. So it's been really perplexing to me just how all over the place they've been offensively, because the whole theory of this team, clearly, they re-signed basically every player from last year was score a lot of points, and they can't. They can't for different reasons every night.
Again, he's Tony East, Locked On Pacers, where you can listen to him. It's an outstanding listen, and he joins us here as the Pacers have one of their quieter weeks of the season. They'll be in Philly coming up Friday, and then they'll have a game on Sunday before traveling out west for the first West trip of the year. Tony, I know you are not one that is a big you aren't a big trade machine guy. You aren't a big, hypothetical rumor guy. But I almost feel like, given the start of the season, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've at least entertained some of that a little bit more. And I preface all of that by saying this. If you told me right now that on February 11th, as we sit here on December 11th, that Benedict Mathurin, Jarris Walker, and Miles Turner would all still be Pacers, I think I'd be highly skeptical of that on February 11th. What would you say?
Yeah. If they keep playing like this, I think you're absolutely right. Just something is in the shake-up department is required almost, right? Like, it's very rare that a team that is not congruent with what was expected, even in the opposite direction, does nothing, right? Like, if the Pacers were dramatically exceeding expectations, they would make sense and then make trades like last year, honestly, for example, when they were buyers. But that is why I think people, and including myself, have thought about it a little bit earlier this year than last. I am a wait and see and not really fill my brain with a ton of fake trade stuff kind of guy. But the trouble I've had with two of the three guys you just said, Jarris and Ben, is they're playing a lot this year, and in theory they would be part of a big trade to get another great player on this Pacers team. But pretend you get to January 20th and I'll make up a record. I don't even know if that's how many games they play by then, but you're 16-26. Like, why would that kind of team be trading away their young guys? But that is a natural next step for a roster that went kind of all in on a certain identity and spending this summer. And so it's kind of an odd thing to overlap, especially if those young guys aren't helping you win right now and you want to win, sooner, because what does waiting really get you, right? They're really going to be worth more in the summer all of a sudden. So it's really tricky with those two, and they were always interesting before the season too. The discussion was, well, these guys are young and developing, and they're also a reason the Pacers could be better this year, but they also seem like they could be pieces that are a part of the next move to get them to the iteration of the team. And of course, the Miles discussion. Have we ever talked about Miles Turner trades before, guys? I'm not so sure.
Never.
Yeah, never in the decade he's been here. It's just how the discussion has to be for any under 500 team. Every guy on an expiring contract, we'll talk about them a lot leading up to the deadline, and Miles Turner is the guy with that. Everyone else is a much smaller piece. So actually, every other player on an expiring contract has a torn Achilles. So Miles Turner will be talked about a lot between now and February. And even the year he got his current contract, the extension 2 years ago, and they were a decent team that year, right? And they were 500 or a little over at the time it happened. They were talking about it then. Rick Carlisle said, after he extended, this trade deadline could have gone different had we not gotten that done with Miles, right? They were better that year record-wise than they are this year. So you just have to consider what you do with your expirings, no matter what, pretty much. They traded away Buddy Hield last year, and they were a good team last year. So I think that Miles will be talked about a lot. If they continue to be around this level, that's what they have to think about.
You have to, yeah.
It's just really tricky because if he's guaranteed to be an unrestricted free agent, I mean, what is his value going to be to other teams who also can't extend him if he's moved, right? So guaranteed rental for anyone but a good player, right? And again, and a good thing for his value potentially, had a good playoffs last year, right? Proven success on that stage. So I don't know what that's going to look like, but if they continue to play like this or have this kind of winning percentage, we're going to talk about him a lot. And by necessity, it makes too much sense.
Tony East with us. Last one for me, Tony. Here's my biggest worry, and this is where I think the whole thing. You mentioned Miles, but you mentioned some of these other players, whether they're young, whether they're guys that you just signed. Remember when a guy like Obi Toppin got signed? We're like, well, his contract matters because if you're going to make another trade, his contract can align with somebody else's contract, right? That was a conversation we had in the offseason. The direction, I'm trying not to freak out, but the direction seemed pretty clear for this team going into the year, the way they wanted to play, the offense that they played, and then they were going to rely on some young players, and Matherin maybe has worked out, Jarris perhaps not. It feels like that direction is really up in the air, and I did not think that would be the case in early to mid-December.
Well, I think their direction still has to remain the same, right? That just because not just because of this, but they just invested so much in Halliburton, Siakam, and you could say maybe, if those guys aren't as good as you thought, maybe you have to reconsider that. But I think you have to, by default, of what their strategy was of pay your best players and then pay the players that made really good sense around them last year. Okay, great. Let's run that back and go. And chemistry was our superpower as the Pacers. Let's do it again. And then the chemistry hasn't been a superpower, and they haven't played as well. But once you chose that direction and said last year, hey, we thought we'd make the conference finals within 3 or 4 years. We did it in one. Okay, let's keep this going. But we might not make it back there again right away. I think it's clear they want to win now, and they have an era and spending sheet set up to win for the next couple of years. They can't trade their pick this year or in 2027 at any point. So even if they want to say, well, this isn't working and we had this vision and we need to change directions now, they kind of can't. they're into this thing. And I think the next step would be to make significant changes to the team if they're not playing well and try to figure it out from there. But I don't think they can really this specific year, if they keep playing bad, yeah, they can. But in terms of the fit of this era and what they're trying to do with their best players they currently have, it's hard to really shake out of that unless you're just totally dreadful or you have years of information we messed up in re-signing these guys. So I guess worry this year for sure, but I can't imagine them significantly knocking off their direction and core this year unless they just are totally dreadful by mid-January or early February.
A couple more minutes. We always appreciate the time and the insight from Tony East. Locked On Pacers, a great listen that Tony spearheads on a daily basis. Tony, there's a Pacers-related Twitter account called Woj It's got a decent following. Give some Pacers Twitter thoughts out there.
He's an Aussie.
Say it again.
That. He's an Aussie. There's a lot of Aussie Pacers fans. I love them.
I had no idea. Shout out Johnny Furphy and company. Okay. Well, he tweets this. Benedict, referencing Benedict Mathurin, is the third or fourth most talented player on this team right now and gets better every day. The Pacers have the most success with a starting five that doesn't include him due to fit. It's a very unfortunate situation we are currently in, and adds this to end the tweet. It's incredibly difficult to navigate, and that's before all the other behind-the-scenes tension we aren't fully privy to. That is the tweet, and it was retweeted by Benedict Mathurin.
It was. I did not know this.
Yes, Benedict Mathurin. I assume 33,000 Twitter followers here. This
man.
looks like Benedict Mathurin to me. Benedict Mathurin, not a frequent tweeter, if I must say, scrolling through his account. Any general reaction to any of that?
Has he undone the retweet? Did this get caught last night?
It says right here. I could screenshot it for you, I guess. Benedict Mathurin reposted. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's not great. It's just it is a kind of factual thing that, I talked about this with Taylor Cooper on my podcast this week. Every year, last year they tried to start Mathurin to start the year, right? And it became clear very quickly, this isn't the right thing for the team. Buddy Hield and Bruce Brown are better fits with Tyrese Halliburton. Okay, Andrew Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith are better fits with Tyrese Halliburton for all sorts of reasons. And so this year they have to start Ben Mathurin, right? They don't have other options with the injuries that they have and the team that they've constructed. And just the duo of Mathurin and Halliburton, the Pacers have a minus 4.8 net rating with both of them on the floor this year. The opposite reality is with Halliburton, no Mathurin, and Mathurin, no Halliburton are both better than that, right? And so that's been a thing his whole career since they picked Mathurin in the lottery, that they are better in, at least by the numbers, when they're not necessarily together, and they have to figure out, and we've talked about this for a million years, how to blend what the Pacers are and what Halliburton is with what Mathurin is. And so maybe that's just not going to be a thing. Last year, plus 8.7 with Halliburton on, Mathurin off, and then with both of them on, they were minus 2.4, right, as a net rating number. So that's been, I think, a struggle for them forever to figure out. And of course it's vital to the future of the Pacers that they either figure out if they do or don't fit, or they find the lineups that make sense that play them together the right amount. And this year, again, by necessity, they've started a lot, but they're just such a bad defensive duo that the Pacers give themselves a hole with them out there. And so if their offense isn't humming together on a given night, and sometimes it does, but a lot of times it's just, some great shot making, and they're trying to line up their strengths, which don't line up. They don't look particularly great. So there's a reason that they made the decision last year to not keep him in the starting five, both a team success thing and a Ben Mathurin success thing, because he did better with the second unit when he could have the ball a little more. And I think if they hadn't been so hurt, they might have run into that reality again this year. So I did not realize he shared that. Of course, that's an interesting thing for him to be thinking or sharing. But, yeah, it is reality for the team.
I just sent it to you, by the way, in case you missed it. Last thing. I don't attend many Pacers practices, certainly during football season. I did attend yesterday's. Is it normal for Steven Simon to be at Pacers practice?
Yeah, he's there a few times when he is here, but he's, not always in Indy.
Right.
So not unusual, I would say.
Got it. Yeah,
I don't know what the perfect term for kind of is in this case, I guess.
I know a lot of people have brought up with the Colts. Carly Ursay is a frequent not only visitor to Colts practice, attendee, but also, of course, on the sidelines during games. I know a lot of people have been curious about that. So, Steven's pretty active on Twitter, so I was just curious if he attends practice a good amount. All right, speaking of practice, Pacers get back to it today and tomorrow, and then head to Philly after that. Pacers and Sixers coming up on Friday. Tony, good luck with the Pacers coverage. Most importantly, good luck with the deck.
Hey, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Tony East, Payless Liquors hotline.
Dude's making a deck. Come on. I mean, out in the cold. What kind of a man? I didn't know Tony East was that manly, quite frankly.
I mean, gosh, I hope my wife wasn't listening.
It's 30 degrees outside.
Just making me look like a pathetic piece of you-know-what. Here I am, can't sleep thinking about Notre Dame losing to IU.
I know, you're worried. Well, I mean, you got Dartmouth tonight.
Well,
Forget about IU.
Right.
You got
Notre Dame tonight.
You got Notre Dame basketball tonight.
Got to beat the fighting Chuck Flint tonight.
I mean, what's Dartmouth? That'd be a quad 3 loss. You can't have that.
Dartmouth beat Boston College earlier this year.
Okay.
Again, Notre Dame without their best player, Marcus Burton, without their stud freshman, Sir Muhammad. So I'm nervous.
Give people that Twitter account that you brought up with Benedict Mathurin again.
Woj Artest, NBA Woody is where you can find it. This is a Australian flag in the Twitter handle, as Tony East pointed out here. But yeah, should I read the tweet again?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm looking at it right now. Go ahead.
Benedict is the third or fourth most talented player on the team right now. Emphasis on right now, and he gets better every day. The Pacers have the most success with a starting five that doesn't include him due to fit. It's a very unfortunate situation we're currently in. It's incredibly difficult to navigate, and that's before all the other behind-the-scenes tension we aren't fully privy to, ... A reposting from Benedict Mathurin.
Ugh. Yeah, that's not good. That's just not good. I don't know any way. I'll
say this about Mathurin.
Okay, go ahead.
He is easily the most unique personality out of all those guys.
Yeah, sure.
He's different.
Sure.
And you can take that good, bad, indifferent. You can take that any other way. But clearly, how he's wired, and I would argue how he plays the game of basketball, is different than everybody out there. I tend to think the team could utilize some of that stuff, but I'm sure that there are some listen to how Rick Carlisle's talked about Benedict Mathurin with us. He's talked about him differently than he talks about other guys.
Sure.
You hear him talk about Ben Shepherd versus Benedict Mathurin.
No doubt.
It sounds very differently. So, when I said to you to lead off the show, and I said it to Tony East right there, Andy, 2 months from today, we will be just past the NBA trade deadline. I find it hard to believe that this 10-15 basketball team will still have Benedict Mathurin, Jarris Walker, and Miles Turner on it.
I agree.
And if you made me pick one of the three, I keep on coming back to Mathurin.
Mathurin's the most valuable one. He's younger. There is a sense that the Pacers
contract could be of value to other teams, but
it's a different value.
I hear you.
If I'm a contender, if I'm a contender and I am in need of a big or I have an injury, right, something like that, and I can go get Miles Turner and I can rent him for a couple months and we can make a playoff run that way, then there is value. Benedict Mathurin, the offensive, there is a sense of he doesn't fit with the Pacers. There is a sense of maybe they need to move on. Is he a starter? Is he not a starter? He's still a young player, relatively cheap. What I was trying to get at with Tony was, yes, the direction with Siakam and Halliburton is the same, but isn't everything else being questioned? I mean, this offense is being questioned. The defense, which was supposed to be better, continually being questioned. Now the NBA is saying, okay, it's going to be a little bit more of a physical league. Well, you just built and signed a bunch of guys that don't fit that mold. I mean, so is that direction okay? If you move away from Miles Turner, okay, then what's the direction behind? I mean, to me, next year, they're going to need a starting center if it's not Turner and a backup. Isaiah Jackson, he's coming off a tough injury. That's a big ask. And then we start talking about, if you have Matherin and Jarris Walker, these are high-end picks, and if both of them don't work out, if Jarris Walker is a bench guy and you end up moving away from Benedict Matherin, that was the direction that we thought you were going. Now you're not going. If you start talking about trades, listen, there are young players that could be traded. There are other guys that have valuable contracts that also could move if you go in a different direction and bring in another bigger time player. So, boy, in the next couple months, next month and a half, there's a lot in the air, and there are a lot of tough decisions that might have to be made.
Two things, and let me be very clear on both. Judging a 21-year-old's Twitter account and trying to make sense of it is probably a little ludicrous. I mean, I can think of numerous Colts players' tweets that I've seen over the years and thought to myself, wow, and then it's turned out to mean absolutely nothing. And I also think it's absolutely, frankly, asinine to act like the Pacers' issues this season are rooted in one player named Benedict Matherin.
Oh, I would totally agree with you.
And again, I'm not saying people are inferring that, but I just want to make that very clear.
No, you're right.
And I don't even think that tweet is necessarily inferring anything on that end. But to your last point, Andy, you're spot on. I mean, here we are with gobs and gobs of questions, and certainly a point in a highly anticipated Pacers season that we didn't think we'd be at here at Game 25. Are you going misery index on us in a few?
Yeah, is that okay?
We'll go NFL fan misery index in a bit here. There might be some fans at 49th and whatever Hinkle Fieldhouse is that might join you on that. At some point, we'll get to that here in the morning checkdown. Let's do that.
The morning checkdown, brought to you by Butler Bulldogs basketball. Saturday, December 21st, Hinkle Fieldhouse will be rocking as the Dogs battle defending national champion UConn. Be there by visiting butlersports.com/buy tickets.
We'll get to Butler basketball here in just a second. Not a good night for them last night. Your final morning check down. Let me give you a little bit more. Barry Odom. We've heard from him why he decided to come to Purdue. UNLV players, will they follow him? What about putting a staff together? He was asked that. Here's what Odom had to say yesterday.
In the next few days, we'll have some that join us from outside. I don't want to put a time frame on that because I may miss it a couple of days with bowl competitions going on, and then the ability to get them here on what that looks like out of respect on what they're trying to finish with their seasons. But we will put together an elite staff that will help us get this off the floor and moving in the right direction really quickly.
Yeah, so just a little bit of Odom yesterday being introduced to the Boilermaker faithful. We hope to talk to him, if not this week, early next week.
Well, he had some high praise for his visits to Ross-Ade and the fan support that he has witnessed, certainly last year. We talked about that. And also, he mentioned on many occasions yesterday how much of a fast track he thinks this can be. And he did not, go to the rebuild sort of word or act like this would be a slow-moving process. So we'll see how effective he can be at that. All right, last night at Hinkle, it was ugly, particularly in the first half. Butler was down 21 at halftime to a North Dakota State team that, if you're falling on the meter of like horrific losses, it's probably not at horrific, but it is a bad loss where you already have a really bad loss on your resume. They lose last night to North Dakota State. Shout out to Willie Veasley, former North Dakota State assistant. Speaking of Butler, though, they were down 21 at half, Andy. Furious comeback in the second half. They take a 5-point lead, and then all of a sudden, they just ran out of gas. And North Dakota State hit several big shots. Butler tried to play bully ball with Telford and Brooks. It did not work. Butler loses 71-68 in that one. Again, they only had 4 turnovers in the game. That's been their issue this season. They only had 4 turnovers. Couldn't defend the three-point line. To be fair, North Dakota State threw in some shots that were pretty wild. But this is a bad loss on a resume that already had a really bad loss. They've got some good on their resume, but this is not that at all. They will now take on Wisconsin coming up 2:30 on Saturday over at Gamebridge Fieldhouse.
Yeah, quad 3 and a quad 4. 2 bad losses at home for Butler. Quickly, NBA Cup quarterfinals. So some teams punching their ticket to Vegas. Bucks over the Magic. Thunder over the Mavs. Did you have anything else?
Yeah, Colts get back to practice later today. We'll hear from Shane Steichen. Injuries or absences of note: Josh Downs, Ryan Kelly, Braden Smith, Juju Brents maybe, Jalen Carlisle maybe defensively. Those are some things to watch. And tomorrow, I think we'll get another nice Thursday night game. Maybe not Packers-Lions from last week, but I like Rams-49ers.
That's a fine. Yeah, I got no problem with it. I never have any idea who's playing for these teams. They have so many injuries, especially the Niners. But if you made your fantasy football playoffs, maybe you had Stafford,
I got Stafford.
or Cooper Kupp, or Puka Nacua. So you'll be at least watching that as well. On the other side, the 5 most miserable fan bases in the NFL. We'll do it next on a Wednesday on The Fan.
Look at Andy's misery index of NFL fan bases here with 4 weeks left in the season. A couple things Colts coordinator-wise from yesterday, Andy. I thought Jim Bob Cooter, in describing Anthony Richardson, some of that late-game stuff, he used the word poise. And it's kind of funny when you think of Richardson. I'd argue he's such a he's an emotional, entertaining player. He has the flair for the dramatic, the flair for the big plays, and then also, big plays in both ways. Sometimes, lately it's been good, but obviously there's been moments of bad too. But yet his actions are pretty reserved, like as a human being. I don't think he is this very loud, boisterous individual, even though that's kind of how he plays the game of football. And yet when he walks into those huddles in the fourth quarter, I would argue he has looked very poised with the Jets and the Patriots. And, I just think that is such a vital, critical quality in creating a great, great quarterback, and yet it is one of the harder traits to teach. And certainly Richardson's got a lot of growth in other areas, and he's got to continue to prove himself in those moments. But early on, to see him flourish here as of late, when those situations have risen up, that is a huge, huge piece to, potentially having a franchise quarterback.
Well, sure, whether it's a young quarterback or not, some guys you see and you're just like, this guy is erratic and he's a mess. We haven't got a lot of that from Anthony Richardson. And was it the Texans game where they decided to try to force the ball down the field and there was an interception late in the first half? Was it the Houston game? It was in Lucas Oil. I'm blanking on the exact
the Texans
game.
And they chucked it deep to Pierce a couple times and Doolin.
Yeah, but remember they tried to. There was the one where he had the bad.
Oh, Houston. He had like the ugly first half.
He had the ugly first half.
A lot of attempts down the field.
Yeah, and right before halftime, if you remember, they tried to force the ball. He just almost threw a pick, and then he threw a pick. And I thought that was maybe one instance where I'm like, okay, he's off right now. You need to understand, Shane Steichen, as the head coach, that he's off. But I haven't felt that too many times, and that's even considering there has been some bad play, but I haven't left that bad play thinking, boy, he's just an erratic mess. And I think with some quarterbacks, you get that. And by the way, Bo Nix hasn't had that this year as a rookie either.
No.
Both young quarterbacks haven't had that.
No. And one other thing, too, shout out to Nick Cross. Gus Bradley used the word trust yesterday with Nick Cross. And, Andy, before the year started, we threw out those 3 names of those draft picks in that same class. Nick Cross, Alec Pierce, Jelani Woods. Who would step up? Who would, ascend as a player? Obviously, Woods, he's out for the year. But, in Pierce's case, I would say he's checked that box, and I think Nick Cross has.
Oh,
I'm not
without a doubt.
Sitting here acting like he's a first-ballot Pro Bowler.
No,
but
without a doubt, yeah.
The trust word was the issue at the start of the season,
Sure.
and the Colts made the switch. They took him from free safety, put him in a strong safety. I think he's a better player at the line of scrimmage. I think he has been a nice bright spot here this season.
Yeah, Jelani Woods is the one that hasn't worked out. And, I think Alec Pierce, listen, this offense, he's not going to have 83 catches, right? It's not the way this offense right now. Maybe in a year or two we'll see with AR.
But that touchdown grab was kind of an unlike Pierce catch.
The one thing that, I shouldn't say the one thing, but his specialty, what he's really good at, I feel like has been magnified this season. I feel like he has solidified himself much more as an NFL wide receiver. There's a worry, hey, is he a bust, being a second-round pick? I no longer think that's the case. And I think that's a pretty good thing as well. All right, you guys, you knuckleheads ready?
Let's
5
weep.
most miserable fan bases in the NFL. All right, let's go. Let's start with number 5 here, Corbin.
Number 5.
All right, number 5. By the way, Corbin's got a lot of pressure on him, all the little sounds and everything. Number 5, and I know you may disagree with this. A couple weeks ago, we disagreed on Jameis Winston. It's got to be the Cleveland Browns. Do you remember just a couple weeks ago, they got that win over Baltimore with Jameis, and he was thanking everybody. He's thanking fans, the media. He was thanking the Lord. He had the pump-up speech. Everyone loves the pump-up speeches. Well, since then, KB, they're 1-4 over the last 5 games, 5 interceptions the last 2 games, and you could really say with the pick sixes, the last 2 games, Jameis Winston has been the reason they've lost.
Well, the Lord needs to listen to his prayers.
Poor Jameis Winston. Give me number 4.
Man, you are one pathetic loser.
All right, sorry, Mark.
Number 4.
I got to go with the Chicago Bears, and perhaps they should be higher on this list, but I kind of think at this point the Chicago Bears fans know that they're pathetic. They're going to have a new head coach. They're going to have an entire new coaching staff. They've lost 7 straight games. Caleb Williams has been sacked.
Is it really 7 straight?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Caleb Williams sacked 12 times the last 2 weeks. Part of that's on him. But the real gut punch was a story that we haven't talked about, and I dropped the ball on Monday. Over the weekend, did you see Jim Harbaugh say I wanted to coach the Chicago Bears, but they didn't care? They didn't want me?
Gosh, did he really say that?
He said that.
Oh.
I mean, that is
Man, Mark Dykton's alcohol intake just increased significantly here over the next week.
I mean, Jimmy Harbaugh, one of the better coaches, obviously, in the entire league, says, yeah, I want to coach the Chicago Bears, and said he goes to the Chargers. They have no fans. Moving on.
Show, Kevin.
Number 3.
The
Tennessee Titans. 42-19 2 weeks ago to the Washington Commanders. People thought maybe they were close. Then they lose to Washington, and then last week they lost 10-6. What was that at home? Even Will Levis is injured. You know, they beat Houston a couple weeks ago. They thought there was some hope. Hey, we're going to end the season. It's going to be different. But the Tennessee Titans have bottomed out this year. They might need a quarterback as well. You can't go with Will Levis. And they lost to Mac Jones. They scored 6 points last week. So number 3, the Tennessee Titans.
So will it be Levis next week when the Colts play them?
I have no idea. He came back in the game, right? I have no idea.
Colts Titans a week from Sunday.
I think the coaching staff there is playing Will Levis to prove that he stinks so they can move on. That's what I think. So there's no, like, next year, Levis could be the guy he's growing in to be a starting quarterback. No. They're just going to start over. I actually think Sam Darnold would be an interesting spot there with the Tennessee Titans. Number 2. Let's go.
Number 2.
All right. It's got to be the New York Giants, but I have a twist to this week, okay? Because we have a new number 1. It
I
had
thought
been
your
the
Giants could have been 1, but
well, they could be.
I'm thinking you might stick in the division.
Well, not quite. They fall to number 2, and here's why. Do you know who, and Corbin, you can answer this as well. Do you know who Ava Louise is? I believe that's how you say her name. Do either of you guys know that name?
No.
Okay, so this is
Daniel Jones' ex-girlfriend or something?
No, she is an OnlyFans model.
Oh, geez.
She has been popular for a number of
I was about to Google her.
Of odd things over the last several years. During COVID, she made a bunch of money and popularity by licking a toilet seat. She also had an affair with Antonio Brown a couple years ago.
Wow. She's out there.
She also went to a Trump...
Spell that name again?
Ava Louise. A-V-A, I think it's L-O-I-S-E. You may know her if you've seen her. Anyway, Corbin's like, I'm not doing that on the internet.
Gosh, those lips.
Okay?
Oh
She also flashed Donald Trump at a rally.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, I'm seeing the hat right here.
There is a direct message trail where a New York Giant player got her free tickets essentially
I'm seeing this, yeah.
3-4 rows back behind the Saints bench. She flashed the New Orleans Saints on Sunday. People are wondering who's the Giant player that would do this. There's a thought that it's Tommy DeVito. Just throwing that out there. She's a Jersey girl. He's a Jersey guy. So because of that, as they are the most miserable team in the NFL, they go to number 2 because of the antics of Ava Louise, the OnlyFans model.
Here in 2 weeks, the Colts come to the sideline and Matt Gay's warming up to go kick, and if he looks to the left there, he might get a little.
There's a chance.
He might get a little action.
There is absolutely a
chance. Might be the most entertaining part of Colts Giants in 2 weeks.
It will be the most entertaining part. And number 1, Corbin.
Number 1.
Number 1 is the Atlanta Falcons. Their fan base every year thinks they have something, and it's in true Falcon fashion. The rug gets pulled out.
Number 1.
Well, here's why. They
How
realize
are the Cowboys not up there.
The Cowboys are done. They realize they've been Kirk Cousined.
Yeah, that is tough.
They thought, we'll have a couple years. He'll throw 30-some-odd touchdowns. We'll at least limp to the, last year they were so close to making the playoffs. If just even Raheem Morris said this when he got hired, it's just a little bit better quarterback play, and we'll be in the postseason. Right now, they're like the 8s. I mean, they're outside the playoffs. They're 2 games back, I believe, of Tampa Bay. They're under 500, same record as the Colts, I believe, and they realized they've been Kirk Cousined as Michael Penix Jr. sits there. They've lost 4 straight, 6 interceptions the last 2 games by your boy Kirk Cousins.
I can't believe you didn't have the Cowboys up there.
Yeah, I don't know.
You've gotten soft here as we approach the holiday season.
But don't they want to lose?
Well,
I mean, didn't they want to lose the other night? Like, why would you want to win that game and just ruin your draft pick? I mean, you're not going to do anything.
5-7. What's the final playoff team going to be?
Now that's a good question. Let me hang on just a second. The final playoff spot, and it's about done in the NFC. You're looking at the Commanders or Rams right now. Basically, the Commanders or Rams. And I believe it's going to be the Commanders, and that's going to be. I believe we're set in the NFC. The Rams would be the only team if they can win on Thursday, especially the Rams I would watch. But to me, the Atlanta Falcons, the only chance they have, can they beat Tampa Bay? They're 2 games back at Tampa Bay right now. They've lost 4 straight, KB. They lost 4 straight. Not good. So
that is bad.
You disagree with any of those?
I don't know.
And you found something on your computer there. You better clean that up a little bit before you get home.
I'm really hoping I'm not on the work Wi-Fi. I thought you were a little harsh on the Falcons. I get the Kirk Cousins-ish angle to it all. But, I mean, it is Raheem Morris's first year.
I know. That's such a bad, that's the gut punch there is it's such a, the NFC South is so bad.
I always forget they drafted Michael Penix.
I know. He's sad. I know. There's been some stuff. If he was good enough, he'd be playing. I don't know. You have a lot invested into Kirk Cousins. You just hate that you're getting the absolute worst of Kirk Cousins in late November and moving into
You say we have
December.
An F1 question on the pop quiz?
There's an F1 question on the pop quiz today.
A Matt Leinart question?
So,
man, we're all over the place.
Scotty did the damn thing, so he'll come in here. Pop quiz on a Wednesday, 239-1070. Load him up. One more segment to go as we wrap things up. Wake up call, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
John's promo right there. Tyson Lawton joined him. That kid runs hard.
Yes, he does. I like the running game of Cignetti. Oh, yeah.
Couple Indiana linebackers for Notre Dame. Jack Kaiser, shout out to Pioneer. Drake Bowen, no relation. I know a lot of people have said that his athleticism kind of resembles mine. Drake Bowen from Andrean has been outstanding here as of late.
The Cignetti train's coming for the Bowen household.
It is.
We'll see what happens here in a week and a half. I can't wait for these games.
Like I said, Matty Bowen has absolutely no respect for my fandom in this matchup. My mother-in-law, of all people, my lovely mother-in-law, the sweet Lisa Lubbers, just an incredible woman. She sent, did you see it going around? I'm sure you saw it. I'm sure you laughed at it yesterday.
Oh, no.
Just the sickening image of touchdown Jesus doing the IU. Hand motion, Scotty's cackling over here in the background.
I like that.
My mother-in-law, of all people, sends that out to the family.
Oh, I don't like that at all.
Despicable.
Yeah, that bothers me. You're gonna be a lone man on this one. You're gonna keep Max close to you. You don't want him to be infested with the IU stuff. This is a father moment to where you got to win on next Friday, and you got to lock in Max to be a Notre Dame fan. Because if not, he's gonna get caught up in all this Cignetti stuff.
I know.
Not good.
Trust me, his mom's done the hoo-hoo. Yeah,
oh boy.
All that.
Oh boy.
Again, come on. Can we side with Dad here for a second here? And if I have to, I'll go here. Ryan Bowen, my great brother,
right,
instilled just so much of this Notre Dame fandom into my body that I love and I adore and I'm obsessed with. Ryan will be welcoming a daughter into the world here.
Oh, goodness.
Coming up in about 10 days.
So game time.
Game time. You think?
Oh boy, well that's a whole nother.
Not to go,
so
super religious on you.
Goodness.
You think God's gonna let baby Bowen come into the world with a loss?
Well,
already did it with Max.
I was about to say Marshall happened a couple years ago, almost.
Not gonna do it again to a Bowen baby, right?
So you're not gonna be watching with him. What's
we'll
the dynamic then?
Well,
okay,
we got it's a long way till Friday. Who knows? Maybe could come early.
Oh man,
maybe she wants to witness the first ever playoff game inside of Notre Dame football stadium. All right, it's time for the pop quiz.
You guys got a lot going on, man.
We got a lot going on right now. I know. I might need another hair transplant. All right, what do you got number-wise for us, Andy?
Let's do caller number 3 today. Corbin, how does that sound?
Marcus,
good morning.
How do you do?
Marcus, how do you do? Do you have any rooting interest, Notre Dame or Indiana?
Yeah, I actually got to coach Drake Bowen when he played for the Indiana Bulls, but I'm cheering for the Hoosiers.
Oh
boy.
Pathetic.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Pathetic. His little brother can really play baseball, right, too?
Yeah, he's going to Oklahoma State, and he can really play football too. That family's just ridiculous. It's
I
crazy.
was gonna say,
must be nice.
Saw some highlights of his brother. I was like, correct me if I'm wrong. Drake was on Notre Dame's baseball team for a little bit, right? I think he got hurt maybe during baseball season.
Yeah, he's still technically on their roster, but I think football has taken a front seat for him.
I mean, he's real. I don't know how much you've watched it, Marcus. He's really played well over the last couple of months. His physicality.
My girlfriend is a big Notre Dame fan, so we're gonna probably have a couple fist fights during the game. So
well, you know what,
House
Marcus?
divided.
I don't know if you're into the swinger mentality here, but from a fandom standpoint, I think we could swing it up for this one. I'll take your girlfriend, and you can take Maddie.
Sounds like an even trade. Okay.
All right, handshake agreement over the phone. I really hope Maddie's not listening here on this Wednesday morning. Andy Sweeney, go ahead.
All right, Marcus, good luck on this Wednesday. Question number 1, name one of the 2 teams that advanced to the semifinals of the NBA Cup last night.
Oh, Lord.
There were 2 games, so 2 teams.
I would say 2 good teams, right? 2 teams you recognize.
Oh, sure.
I don't really know who was playing, but I am going to – you said they're good teams, so it's definitely not the Lakers.
One of them hates the Pacers. There you go.
Boston Celtics.
How about one more guess?
Miami Heat.
You need to listen to your girlfriend more often, man, because I don't know if you've got the right sports knowledge here. The most obscure NBA city out there.
The most Utah.
Number 2 here. The Butler Bulldogs fell to North Dakota State last night at Hinkle. Who led the Dogs in scoring? Was it Jameel Telfort, Patrick McCaffrey, Pierre Brooks, or Augusto Cassia?
I'm going to say Pierre.
Look at you. Got that one. All right, question number 3. The 2025 racing season concluded last Sunday with Formula One's Grand Prix of Abu Dhabi. McLaren's Lando Norris won the race, while Red Bull's Max Verstappen clinched the Drivers' Championship following the Vegas race in November. Which team won the Constructors' Championship? McLaren, Red Bull, Mercedes, or Ferrari? Boy, to be Lando Norris, by the way, a young guy with all that money. Oh, I bet he's having a great time. What did you say? Red Bull? You want to try again?
Red Bull.
Want to try again?
Yeah, this team was prominent in the Indy 500, right, Scotty?
They had a difficult day qualifying, if I remember correctly, but they got things together. Yes, they survived it.
Yeah, I know less about Formula One than I do about the NBA. I'm gonna go. McLaren. That sounds like a good team.
Tell you what, Marcus, good work not cussing there. How great does Tony East's deck look,
Oh,
Andy?
I just saw that. That does look good. Good for him.
Tony East and his father there. I believe his father's the principal at Zionsville High School. All right, number 4 here. 20 years ago today, that's Matt Leinart won the Heisman. Jeez, you guys are really just knifing me here with some of these Notre Dame-related stuff. That's USC's Matt Leinart, of course. He would play in the NFL. I can't say I remember anything about him in the NFL. For 3 teams. Which of the following teams, Marcus, did Matt Leinart not play for? Okay. Texans, Raiders, Cardinals, Chargers. I guess I do remember him as a Cardinal.
Okay, well, he definitely played for the Cardinals. Who was the first team? Did you say the Titans?
Yeah, Texans, Raiders, or Chargers. Which one did he not play for?
I feel like I remember him playing against the Colts at least once or twice, so I'm going to say he played for the Texans. I'm going to say he did not play for the Chargers. And Mr. East just retired last year from Zionsville.
Oh, look at
I'm
that.
the announcer there.
Did he?
Shout-outs.
Yeah. Yep.
How about that? Marcus, did I meet you in the press box a few years ago, Zionsville, Brownsburg?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. I was Yeah, Brownsburg was very good at football.
Would you do some scouting out there?
No, I was Brendan King and I were on the call. No. If I told Maddie I was going out to scout high school football on a Friday night, we'd probably have some issues on that.
Belichick may hire you, when he takes a job in North Carolina.
Yeah. By the way, Marcus, great work getting to that answer.
Good one. Final one, 75 years ago today, the final championship game for the All-American Football Conference was played with the Cleveland Browns winning their 4th AAFC championship in the 4-year history of the league. Now, the team the Browns beat was one of two teams other than the Browns to merge with the NFL for the 1950 season. Who did the Browns beat in the 1949 AAFC championship game? The Baltimore Colts, the San Francisco 49ers, the Los Angeles Rams, the Minnesota Vikings.
Ooh, man. I remember that the Colts were really good at the start of the NFL, and they were Baltimore Colts then. So I'm just going to go with the hometown team and go with the Colts.
All right, not a bad effort
good job,
there
Marcus.
for Marcus. Pierre Brooks was correct. He ended up pivoting and went to McLaren. That is correct. And the Chargers. Matt Leinart played for the Texans, Raiders, Cardinals, so he got that one right. But Andy, he pays no attention to the NBA.
No, the Bucks won last night. The Thunder won last night. And the answer, as you mentioned, to number 5 was actually the San Francisco 49ers.
Do you remember last year the Pacers played the Bucks at like 2 in the afternoon in Vegas?
I do remember that.
That was such an odd start time. It was great for like you and I and like no one else.
Yeah, it was great for us. That's all we care about. If it's good for you and I. It's too bad that they just fizzled out. They fizzled out this season. That was a fun little run last year.
I know.
It did a lot for the Pacers. I thought it kind of put them on the map, even though they didn't play very well against the Lakers there in the final.
Reminder, Sean Gregory we had on earlier in the show. He is from Time Magazine. He wrote what I thought was a great read. And really, on Caitlin Clark and that Athlete of the Year piece, it doesn't matter, Andy, if you want candid answers on the Olympics, racial questions, Angel Reese.
Oh, yeah.
Christy Sides, her improvements for this season. You get all of it. So I thought it was a great read. Appreciate Sean joining us earlier.
Yeah, check that out. Then again today, Shane Steichen's going to be meeting with the media. You mentioned it, the biggies, especially Ryan Kelly, Josh Downs. What do we hear from a couple of those injured guys? You miss any of the show? Check it out, 1075thefan.com. Have a good afternoon right here on The Fan.